to report for physical.
Right.
So I reported for physical. My friend I grew up with, this friend I told you about, got his as well. So we went down together and we reported. And then they put this notice out that they were going that next month they were going to, I can't remember the number. It seemed to me it was 100. They were going to draw 100 names. The first 100. That's the way they were saying it. And we looked at our numbers, and we were like in 50 or 60. So we kind of thought, you know what, we're going to be drafted probably. I could have, you could gotten out of it with a deferment. However, his father served in the Marine Corps and was on Guadalcanal.
Ah, yeah.
And so we're thinking, what are we going to do? And he came by on his motorcycle. I had a motorcycle one day, and he said, let's go join the Marine Corps together. And I jumped on a motorcycle, joined the Marine Corps. And my parents were livid. Everybody I knew was livid. You know, they were shocked, stunned, I think. And then I look back and think, what are you thinking when you're 18 years old? You know? We had just graduated high school. And I mean, you know, we were on our own, I guess. And so I had some great opportunities. and so we, you know, we were bound at that point on. To go, and we went and served together. And
so what's your friend's name?
Gary Wombles.
Gary Wombles.
And he lives down still to this day in Southport area. And we just, you know, we're still like brothers, and great guy, and we joined on the buddy system, went through training together, and that's what they guaranteed. But it's amazing. I'm Whitlock, he's Wombles, and there was always somebody between us. If you know anything about the military, at least in that day, it was 1, 2, 1, 2. And so they'd say, count off 1, 2, 1, 2, and all the ones go here and all the twos go there. And there was always somebody between us. So we'd count off, we were always the same numbers. And we go to Los Angeles, to our infantry training at Camp Pendleton together. We got sent to Okinawa together, got sent to Vietnam together, and we got put in the exact same unit.
Oh, for heaven's sakes.
And were wounded in the same action.
Oh, good grief.
Minutes apart in the same action.
Got to know him pretty well, didn't you?
We did. I told him later, I said, we took that buddy thing way too far.
Okay, I have to ask the question, motorcycles, which one did you have?
We both just had Honda 300s.
Yeah.
And we worked same construction site together. We were carpenter work.
All right, so you graduated high school and you went right into construction work?
Well, we did construction all the way through high school.
Okay.
Through the summer, that's what I did every summer.
All right.
And it was a guy in my church that built apartments in Beech Grove and houses. And we both worked for him.
Great training.
It was, and Gary's dad was a carpenter. My dad built homes on the side, so we grew up with that. Yeah. And we both had motorcycles. We rode to work, and we'd ride together afterwards and go camping together. And so he would come by and say, hey, let's get a hamburger. I'd jump on my motorcycle, and there we'd go, you know. And he just came by one day and said, let's go join the Marine Corps. And I said, okay. We jumped on it, there we went.
Yeah, and the exam center, the AFI Center downtown Indy.
Yes.
I was more afraid of that building than I was Vietnam.
That's right. That's exactly where we went.
That was a piece of work. Yeah, so
ready to fall in.
That's right.
Yeah, I had. It was an interesting experience. So you take me down the path. You went where to join the Marine Corps? There was a recruiting office in Indy.
We drove downtown Indianapolis to the big federal building there.
Okay.
And they had a recruit office there. Right. It was the same. You know, we went for the physical. Downtown, and we went there, and it's interesting. Vietnam's going on, and they actually tried to talk us out of it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they showed some pretty graphic videos. They said, "Now, does this bother you?"
Yeah.
We said, "Well, yeah, it bothers
Yeah.
us." And we were not deterred, and so we signed up.
Wow.
And passed the physicals okay.
So what was your political leanings toward Vietnam at that point?
At that point, and Gary was the same way as I was, we were very patriotic because he grew up very patriotic. I grew up I grew up in this home that my
Sure.
dad served the country, my grandfather, my great-grandfather, and so we were very patriotic. And at the time, there was dissension, as we know, in the 60s.
Right.
But the change that took place from the time I went to Vietnam and came home was as different as it was a different world. When I came home from Vietnam, it was a different world, different view. Now, it wasn't just anti-Vietnam. Yeah. We became very anti the way the government was running things. Right. A lot of guys did that.
Sure.
And guys played it out in different ways. Yeah. Some with marijuana, which was very frequent over there. And others maybe with alcohol or whichever way it was. And some would get involved politically. I just saw my friends taking these different courses from that. But there was, not too long ago, I was asked from Ball State, my son was in a class, some psychology class, I think it was, and they said, would your father write down something about his take on Vietnam? And, to make it brief, I told them that, everybody says we shouldn't have been there. That wasn't the issue. The issue was we belonged to SEATO, Southeast Asia Treaty Organization, like we belonged to NATO.
Sure.
And the agreement was if any country was attacked, we would protect that country, just like NATO. And we were obligated. So was Australia and Korea, and several of those countries were part of SEATO. So we were there because of that. They were attacked by the North. And but the war itself became a political bog now. Yeah. We never lost the battle. The last I was there at the end of 1968. There was not the North Vietnamese couldn't field an army. The last 15 prisoners that I was part of capturing were not over 14 years old.
Oh my gosh.
And so that told me they're beat
losing.
up.
Yeah.
If this was a real war where you took it to the enemy, they wouldn't be able to fight back. And that's not what happened. What happened was, as you know, and here I'm sounding political here, our government didn't want it to become like World War II and it was.
Yeah, they handcuffed you.
It was, and we were very handcuffed. Yeah. So the hill I was wounded on, we had, the time I was there, we had gone back to take that same hill 3 different times. We were at Khe Sanh. And every time it cost us 50% of our company or more. And we were saying, why don't we, hey, I got an idea, why don't we stay here?
Yeah, yeah.
And we wouldn't. They would make us come back off. And there were times you could hear enemy trucks pulling up at night back up on the hill. And so I'm not anti-war now. I'm merely saying the least ranked person could have told you a better way
Sure.
to have won that.
Yeah.
There were times that when the enemy were so devastated and beaten, at one point, the helicopter pilots told us that they saw the enemy that looked like a trail of ants going back into Laos or Cambodia,
yeah.
but Laos, going back into Laos carrying either wounded or dead on poles. And we were not allowed to shoot at them because they had crossed the border.
Yeah.
And of course, as you know, there were times we did anyways, but it was those kind of things. When I first got over there, I was shocked. You know, I was patriotic, I was green, and we go out on a patrol and get fired at from a pagoda. And that didn't mean anything to too many folks, but it's just a little shrine thing. Maybe one or two people could get inside of it, and it had what to me looked like a tomb, gravestone in front of it, which was a monument. But the enemy snipers would get in there and shoot at us, and shoot one or two guys. We were not allowed to shoot at it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
We'd have to call for permission, and then they'd have to call regiment, and regiment would have to call the in-country liaison and get permission. By the time it got back to us, either a couple more guys had been shot or that they'd fled. Yeah. And finally, I remember my squad leader one time, we went out, we got fired on, a fella got shot, and he took a rocket launcher and just devastated it, and never said a word. We just went in,
yeah.
And he actually got in trouble for it when the word finally. And isn't that amazing? The enemy could get the word to our places, and so that right off probably told any American military person something is wrong here.
Yeah.
And so that became. You know, I was not part of any kind of rebel-rousing group, shooting civilians. I was never part of that.
Right.
Or did I see that? Though I know that's what they depict in the movies most, but I don't think it was that. It happened. But, you know, of the frequency.
It happened in World War II.
That's right. It was overlooked there because
Yeah.
of the devastation of the war. But I was in Way City. And that was like a bombed out World War II city. It was atrocious, the civilian deaths. But there was as many civilians in Way City because we dug them up that were executed by the North Vietnamese. And then I was at Khe Sanh in the mountains and around Khe Sanh, and that was a free fire there. You know, you didn't have to ask any questions there. And still there were restrictions, and so you know, a lot of guys turned against the war for that reason, not because they didn't say we shouldn't be there, but because if this is going to happen to us, then let's get out of here.
Yes, but going into it, you went into it with a patriotic attitude. And,
very much, very much. And I still am very patriotic, but I will say to this day that if we go to war as a nation, we should not go with banners and bands. We should go with a heavy heart.
That's right.
And to go into it. And I don't know if we went into Vietnam that way, but, you know, when I went, you went over there, you just got on a plane, they fly you over there. Yeah. They assign you somewhere, and when you come home, it was the weirdest thing in the world. If anybody's, I know others have experienced it, but you come out of combat, you're jumping. All somebody's going to do is drop a plate on the floor, and you jump 2 feet.
Yeah.
And so you come right out of that, get on a plane, and come home. And I know my family thought I was out of my mind or something, you know, because I jumped at everything.
Oh, sure.
And doors slamming and whatever it was. And, you know, and I was still patriotic, but I think it took me a while to assimilate how do I put this in my mind and play that out in the values of my life. Yeah. And, you know, and so I'm still very patriotic, but I don't think a lot of the world has changed. I think whenever we do something, it bogs down politically in a war. Yeah. And the ones we're in now have not changed.
I'm afraid I'm seeing that too.
And so so then the loss of life becomes, why are we doing this?
Right.
And
Well, the enemy knows if I kill 2,000 soldiers, then the American public will turn against it. So,
and
I'll go out and
really
kill
was
2,000
the
soldiers.
we didn't know it then, but it really was the agenda for the North. They really didn't care how many of theirs they killed, but the deaths on our side, they knew it would turn the public sour. And so, as a young person coming from that, it took me some years to assimilate. I think I threw myself into life and marriage and children, and it took about 20 years, and then it hit.
Yeah.
And I went through. I didn't go through PTSD where it interfered with me, but I went through PTSD classes, and to understand what we were facing, you know, and we know now that kicks up years later, you know, in a person's life. It's amazing. I realized it started affecting me after my kids were gone, growing up, gone. Now I'm at home, do what I want to do. I don't have to focus on.
Strange.
It was very strange.
Yeah, kind of like an LSD flashback years later, just out of nowhere.
It really was. It really was, and it didn't make me dysfunctional, but it's one of those things you think, hey, I don't want to be thinking this constantly, you know, but you do, and so my friend is this Gary Wombles and I, though we were together when we were wounded. He has had a lot more difficulty than I've had with that PTSD going through it.
So where'd you actually go to boot camp?
Went to San Diego.
Oh, Hollywood Marine.
That's right. That's right. Didn't feel like it, but
yeah. At what point did you arrive in San Diego and say, "Wow, I'm glad I joined the Marine Corps"?
That took a long time. Matter of fact, the last thing my dad said to me was, "You may regret that you've done this, son." And that night, I had to fight not to cry. They slapped on us and kicked on us, and it was midnight anyways. You're tired, you're wore out, and they're screaming at you, you know, and you get in bed, maybe it might have been 1 o'clock when we finally they made us make our beds ahead of time, you know, and I think 4 in the morning they come in crashing the trash cans and to wake us up, and my friend and I, this Gary Wombles, when we joined and we got on the left, the recruiter shook our hand and said, "Good luck, men." I've never forgot that. It said, "Good luck, men." And I'm expecting that when I get there. And we landed at the San Diego airport. I said, I have never forgot this. And we have our manila envelopes, and we're expecting a DI. He said, "You'll have somebody meet you at the airport." And we were expecting a DI to meet us there and say, "Welcome to the Marine Corps, men," you know. And we walked around the corner, and there was a guy standing there like this with his Smokey the Bear hat down like that, you know. And my friend was chewing gum. And I mean, right in the middle of the airport, he slapped my friend upside the mouth, said, "Spit that gum out." And he just spit it out. And he punched me in the stomach. I had my hands in my pockets like this, and said, "Get your hands out of your pockets." And he marched us out of the airport. And people didn't hardly look up. I guess they just saw that so much. We got outside, and there must have been 30 guys standing at attention out there, and we were the last two. They were waiting on us. And he put us on that bus, and from there on, it was downhill. I have never forgot it. And I remember that night, all I could think about was my dad's voice saying, "Son, you may regret it."
Not a good way to start.
Oh, that's funny. So, but you were in pretty good physical shape from the wrestling and what have you. So
very, very much. That really paid off because there were guys that were not ready for boot camp.
Where did you struggle with boot camp?
You know, I really didn't struggle with a lot. When they said, now, The long distance running, that became my struggle probably because I was short-legged.
Yeah.
I was short and stocky, and they would fill your pack with sand. And there were guys, and then they would put the tall guys in the front. There was a reason for that, because by the time you got to the end, walking, running, it didn't matter. You had to do double time to keep up with the tall guys.
Yeah.
And so I always was at the end. And I ran. If they were walking, I ran the whole time. I had to keep up.
Oh, gee.
And so that was probably my struggle, the long distance running.
Yeah.
With no let up. But as far as the other physical things, to me that was a snap. Yeah. And you know, the weaponry was a snap. That wasn't a problem. I'd grown up using rifle and pistol and shotgun, and so there really wasn't a lot, and I kept my nose clean, so to speak, as they say. You know, I didn't. If they said march, you do it this way, I did it that way. You know, and so there was some guys just had trouble obeying exactly, and we're always in trouble.
You know, I can't figure that out.
Yeah.
It'd be so simple just to say, yes, Sergeant, as opposed to...
They were always saying something under their breath and getting smacked upside the head. And I know they can't do that anymore, you know, can't beat up on a guy, but they did then. So, you know, but I do know what they were doing. They demeaned almost everything about your life. You know, that mommy isn't going to take care of you anymore, daddy isn't here, you know, and we know what they're totally stripping you and remaking you to think like they think. Yeah. And you know, we were proud when we graduated and went through our final phase of the course that you go through.
But was there that moment when you said, hey, I'm a Marine?
There was. And it, you know, I felt it, but it was when they graduate you as a Marine of the United States Marine Corps, you know, and it was really a proud, you know, proud moment then when I realized I did it. I made it through. And so we were real proud. My family was proud, and I, you know, I'm still proud of it that I served in the Marine Corps and have a lot of great friends and memories, and even the tragedies that you go through. There are things about those that have propelled the values of my life, because you have to decide what really is important. Right. You know what life is about.
That's true.
When you come out of it, and so not all guys do the same thing, but mine, it propelled my value system. You know, what's important.
So from boot camp, you went to Pendleton for infantry training?
Went to Pendleton. They shortened the training. This was 1967, coming up to Christmas. So they shortened the training because they said they wanted to let us have Christmas leave. And I also think they were getting us ready to go to Vietnam. Yeah. But I don't even think they realized at the time, not till we came back, it happened. The Tet Offensive started in February, and that's when I was sent over there, February 1968.
Okay.
And I turned 19 in December, and so I graduated high school in June, and you know, by February of that following year, I turned 19 at the end of the year, and in February, I'm sent to the most horrendous year that Vietnam experienced. Loss of life and everything, and that was a major. You talk about different. You know, this is not just high. Matter of fact, high school was meaningless at that point on, when our feet hit the ground. And so it was an immediate maturing. It still amazes me to this day, because when I was wounded and they sent me back over there, all of the guys in my squad had been killed or wounded, and I became a squad leader. And I'm thinking, I look back now and I'm thinking, who would put a 19-year-old in charge of the lives of a bunch of 18-year-olds? And it was an amazing era. It was an amazing period. And there were guys who were, they were genuinely John Wayne. And I don't mean they were reckless. I mean, if you wanted to look to a person who was steady, who was going to get it done, you know, it was what's the movie, Iwo Jima with John Wayne?
Sands of Iwo Jima.
Sands of Iwo. If there was a Sergeant Riker, I think he was in that movie, I had a squad leader that he was Sergeant Riker. And so, and then the friend of mine who was killed that lives here in Indiana, when I became squad leader, I actually would say to myself when we would come up on stuff and have to, I'm not talking about a quick decision, I'm talking about we come up and decide what we've got to do here. I would think, how would Smitty do this? Because that's what he was. Even the officers turned to this guy and said, what do you think we should do? You know, and so I would find myself emulating these guys. How would they have done it? You know, and that sort of thing. So those kind of guys became my mentors and heroes to me. And I would never say I was a hero, but I sure served with some. And
that's true. What division and regiment were you in?
I was in the Marine Corps Fox Company, 2nd Battalion, 3rd Marines.
Okay.
And Marine Corps puts them right down to the platoon and squad. I was 1st platoon, 1st squad. But Fox Company, and to this day, there's actually a book called The Defense of Foxtrot Ridge. And that's the action. It was a horrendous action. And the only thing it could be is the enemy were trying to totally wipe out a company, because it didn't matter to them how many they were losing. They sent a battalion charge at our company.
Oh yeah.
And it, you know, and of course my squad was all the way down to the bottom of the hill. There was nothing they could do. They just flat overran them. And I was wounded on that hill, the defense of it, when we first encountered the battalion. We didn't know that it was a battalion at the time. And so I was taken out as one of the wounded, and not knowing that if it hadn't happened, I wouldn't have survived. I'd have been with that squad. And
you were probably thinking at the time, boy, this is not good. I'm hurt.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And you want to be with your friends.
Yeah.
You know, matter of fact, I was in the hospital, which was like a MASH unit, so you know, for about a week, and it was so full so they sent me to this place we call our rear area, but it was for guys to recover from their wounds. Mine wasn't recovering, and so I was there when that assault took place, and I can remember sitting up all night listening to the radios to hear what's going on, wondering, are these guys surviving it? And it wasn't until the next morning the casualty list came in.
Yeah, that would be tough. That would be hard.
And they were all my squad.
Yeah.
And so I realized, wow, you know, and that's those twists and turns of life that take place. And so it was a difficult time. There wasn't anybody left that could identify any bodies, and they required that then for whatever reason: dental records, dog tags, and a visual identification. So they sent me to a place called Dong Hall, which is where they sent all the bodies, and it's called Dong Hall Graves. And I had to go there. They flew me there, and then I had to identify all the bodies. And so that was traumatic. You know, as a teenager. And so.
Not just the forensics of it, but the personal connection.
That's right. Yeah, I saw every guy that was my friend, and I talked to, and we knew each other. We knew each other's life and history and things like that, you know. And so that was pretty numbing. And so it took me a few days, just kind of numbness, I think, shock maybe to get over that. And
maybe even wondering, how come I'm not in this pile?
Oh, very much. Took me a long, it still does, you know.
Yeah,
but
I belong with these guys. How come I'm not here?
Yeah, yeah. And several of us wanted, when all that action was going on, we said, is there any way they can get a helicopter and get us up there?
Yeah.
You know, and that's amazing. Guys want to do that.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't make you a hero.
No,
There's something
no.
about that camaraderie that you say, I got to be there with my
Well, and you learn that in the Marine Corps more than other places.
Well, you know, of course, was part of the training. I think my dad talked about that, and you know, you stay with your buddies, you don't leave them, you know, things like that.
Yeah.
And so it was pretty devastating time or period.
Gosh.
So I got sent to Yokosuka, Japan hospital to recover after that.
Okay. That might be a pretty. To me, like you went over as a unit. You weren't a replacement or anything. You guys went together. I take it you flew from.
Actually, we didn't.
Oh.
We went as individuals.
Okay.
Now we went as a whole plane load.
Okay.
But when you got there, then they put you in a holding area, and everybody got assignments.
Okay.
And so what they did here again, this was an amazing thing. They had the 1st Marines and the 3rd Marines.
Okay.
And they numbered you 1, 2, 1,
2.
2. And my friend and I were 1, 1, you know, because there's always somebody between us. And we get sent to the 3rd Marines.
Huh.
And then in the 3rd Marines holding area, they numbered us. And so they said, this group is going to go with Echo Company, and this group's going to go with Fox
Company.
And so we get the Fox Company, and we get sent to the same platoon. And so we actually went, you go over individual, and we came back actually, even though you come back with a plane load of guys,
Yeah.
you were coming back on your own.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't the unit. That was one of the drawbacks, I think, to Vietnam. My dad came over. Matter of fact, I've got a picture of him in Reader's Digest in there.
Oh.
That they took a picture of the 4th Infantry Division on the ship coming around Statue of Liberty into the war, and Dad's right there on the top of that ship, and but you know, however long it takes to come back on ship, they got to unwind. Debrief, whatever they want to call it.
Yeah.
Talk about their experiences and everything. But in Vietnam, most guys didn't get to do that. You actually came back quiet. Nobody hardly talked about anything on the plane.
Huh.
And you're home in 12 hours instead of 12 days.
Yeah,
That's
just
exactly
no decompression at all.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think we may have learned that with because I've got a nephew now that had finished his 3rd tour in the airborne in Afghanistan. And they brought him back. Took him over as a unit, brought him back as a unit, and then the unit had to go through this kind of like a debriefing, whatever you would do, you know, with them to talk out some of the things they'd gone through. Yeah. Where in Vietnam, you just came home, you know, and I guess they just said, okay, it's over for you. You can adjust now. But it was a tough adjustment for a lot of guys.
Yeah, it wasn't real done well. Flying over, did you make any stops along the way, or just fly straight to Vietnam?
They stopped in Hawaii. That's my only time I can say I was in Hawaii for about 2 hours. And then they flew from there to Guam, and from Guam to Okinawa. And we spent about 2 weeks in Okinawa at best, and then flew to Da Nang.
Okay.
And so it was just quick stops till you get to Da Nang. And get sent to your replacements.
So you get to Da Nang, did they give you any kind of warnings or precautions before you got off the plane?
You know what's amazing, and you see this in the movies, and it really did happen. We flew over to American Airlines.
Yeah.
And, I mean, they're using a civilian airline to fly into a war zone. And just before we land, the pilot says, when we land and the door opens, no one hesitates. Get off the plane. I think of, and I mean and it was the old, they rolled the stairs out to you, and you go, and boy, we grabbed our bags and we were out of there, and evidently it was very common for the enemy to mortar the runway.
Sure, yeah.
When the planes come in, because they knew the troops were coming in or going out. Mainly coming in, they would mortar, and so the pilot didn't want to be sitting there very long while they're setting their sights, And the planes evidently would never, is what I found out, they came in and they didn't like in ours, they just come in and they taxi to the usual spot. They didn't do that there. You never knew where they were going to taxi because they didn't want the enemy mortars to just fix their mortars.
Right.
They're set. Wait for the next plane to come in. So the plane might taxi way down, or might go this way, might go that way, and they just said, "Get off the plane fast."
Now, because I'm getting out of here.
We weren't mortared, but didn't. I found out that's was the MO.
Oh, we've interviewed a few that were just as soon as they got off the plane. What was your MOS? At that point?
0311 infantry.
Okay.
0300 Marine Corps was all infantry things,
okay.
but it may be infantry, machine gun, mortar, rockets, and all of them had different numbers.
Did you have any kind of specialty within that?
I was just called a rifleman.
Okay.
And is what my main thing was. I was 0311 rifleman. And so I was immediately assigned to a squad, and our squads were always depleted. You never were up to, and that was some of the problem with what happened with my squad when they were overrun. They were so depleted, they had them dig their holes so far apart that when one hole finally got knocked out, you can imagine the other two holes couldn't even see each other.
Right.
And now the enemy are pouring through, and that's always. As a matter of fact, I was told by some of the guys in the other squads that survived that they warned the lieutenant, our holes are too spread, and a machine gun can't even see this hole over here. So if that hole gets knocked out, he can't cover it. And he said, doesn't matter, everybody. And so they dug their holes. And so they. That's what it didn't take me long to find out. You get your replacements, and then you're depleted very quickly. It's either injuries, it's certainly combat, either wounded or killed, and then diseases. Guys got sick. You got. We had guys that got bit by snakes, bit by bats.
Yeah.
Just anything like that.
Yeah, you didn't need the enemy to take
really.
you out there.
And
tigers and
really, and I encountered all of those. I encountered probably one of the most poisonous snakes in the world, and encountered a panther one night out on a patrol, on a listening post.
Gee.
And found out if you just freeze and don't do anything, he'll go around you.
Oh boy.
So it was an interesting. Guys got malaria. That was the other big one.
Yeah.
That happened, and often they didn't take their tablets.
Yeah.
You got your malaria tablets, and they would stand you up and say, step 1, everybody hold your pill up. Step 2, everybody put it on your tongue.
Yeah.
Step 3, you got your canteen, everybody take a drink. We'd all do that. And then you'd walk away and you'd see these little yellow pills laying.
Oh, man.
I was too cowardly. I didn't want to, I thought, I don't want something, even if you survive it and get out of here.
Yeah.
You're going to have the rest of your life.
You will. We actually had a fellow who was captured in the fall of Singapore who had a malaria episode while we were filming.
Oh, is that
I mean,
right?
it's 60 years later.
I know some
Yeah.
guys that had malaria. You can't give blood. You know,
Yeah.
there's all kinds of
all kinds of things you can't do.
that you will carry the rest of your life because of that malaria. And I didn't. I'd rather dig my hole deeper and take my tablet. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. So from Da Nang, they didn't exactly put you up in a luxury hotel for a couple weeks vacation.
We spent probably just a couple days in a tent.
Yeah.
Hotter than blue blazes. And matter of fact, this friend I joined with and we couldn't take it. They had a cot. I didn't realize that was the best bed I was going to have when I got over there, but we carried our cots outside and slept outside.
Yeah.
It just was too hot in the tent. But they flew us to the Fulak Mountains where our unit was at that time. And that's, from that point on, you know, that's where I became the ground pounder, as they call him, you know. And we walked. I remember my DI when he called he's 0311's out, called our names out. You guys gather over here. He said, Sergeant Ackerman. He said, all of you have heard the song, "These Boots Are Made for Walking," and you know. We all heard that song.
Oh, yeah.
He said, well, mark this down. You're going to know what it means. These boots are made for walking before you get through. And boy, he was right, because we probably wore a pair out. You know, if you went through the whole, made it through the whole tour in the jungle, there's no way your boots could make it. So
Yeah.
it just rot and wear and all that kind of stuff, you know. And so you walked everywhere. He was sure right on that.
So that was another strange thing about Vietnam. You can't have one person say, I know about Vietnam, because it was spread out over so many years, so many different situations.
Oh my goodness, that's
You
right.
guys were in the mountains. Other guys were in the Mekong Delta.
And it was
everywhere
also
in
different.
between.
That's
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. What about the native people from that area? Was that where the mountain yard?
The
tribesmen
mountain
were?
yards were there, and in the mountains, we'd see them a lot. The amazing thing was, I saw the whole time I'm up around Khe Sanh, that's where I spent most of my time, I saw no civilians. We saw the mountain yards, but they were anti-North Vietnam, and we often armed them and fed them and things like
I often wondered what happened to them after.
that. A lot of them were driven out or killed because they went after them, because they really helped. And then our government abandoned them. That's what it comes down to.
That's what drives you crazy.
You know, we just said, okay, you're on your own, you know, and they, you know, they were jungle people. I mean, and we used them for guides, and they knew the jungle. But I can remember the first time we finally got back down what we call the lowlands, where there's villages, and we went through the villages, how eerie I felt.
Huh.
Because you feel like every person is a Vietnamese,
Right.
a Viet Cong. You know, the Viet Cong were the civilians who worked with the North Vietnamese Army, and they just dressed in civilian clothes, and so I can remember they were so kind and nice to us. The villagers were,
Yeah.
and yet I had this really eerie feeling, you know, because you just didn't. Do we trust them? Do we not? And matter of fact, one of the first times, and I've never forgot it. It's just amazing. We tried to cross a river and came under heavy fire, and there was a man behind us with a water buffalo plowing. And if you could imagine this, they're firing RPGs, machine guns across the river, are firing at us, and we're down firing back. They're shooting mortars, we're shooting mortars back, and he's just
plowing away.
and I mean, we're not talking 100 yards or 200 yards away. You know, we're talking less than 100 yards. He's just plowing, just keeping plowing. And I was at the bank of the river, and they were saying we were going to cross, get my fire team ready, and we're hunkered down, you know, so some crazy round wouldn't accidentally hit us, and something's crawling up behind us, so we could hear it. and we got all ready, and here came a boy, couldn't have been, I say 10, but you know, they looked so young anyways. The Vietnamese were small, and he probably was a teenager, but he looked 10 or 12. And he's crawling toward us with 2 Coke bottles, Coca-Colas.
Wow.
And he says, GI, you buy Coca-Cola. And this guy says, next to me, he says, how much? And he says, $1. You know, you can imagine.
Yeah.
And so this guy in my squad buys these 2 Cokes for $1 a bottle. And that kid crawls off. And I'm sitting there, and we're being, and I'm telling you, there's sands kicking up, and rounds are cracking over your head, mortars are firing over there, and I'm thinking, this is surreal. This is not real. This is the movies, you know, the things.
It's like a commercial in the middle of the movie.
And so
movie.
this guy just bought the Cokes, gets ready to open them, and my squad leader is sitting there the whole time watching this whole thing. And he says, have you held those up to the sunlight? And he goes, why do I need to hold them up to the sunlight? He said, because it's common around here that they put broken glass and sell you a Coke. And this guy says, you mean I just lost $2? He held it up, and he looked, and he says, there's no glass in there. And he drank it.
Yeah.
He said it was good tasting Coke, you know. And I'm thinking how surreal that life is. You're in a jungle. You see these civilians, and the truth of the matter is, I don't think they knew whose side to be on.
Yeah.
They just wanted to. That was my take as a 19-year-old. Is, you know, that guy out there doesn't care who's running this country. He just wants to plow his field.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you know, it doesn't make one side or another right or wrong. I'm just saying that I think most of the people were that way.
Just leave me alone.
they wanted to carry on with life.
Yeah.
And probably if the VC come through, they were all for the VC, and when the Americans came through, they were all for the Americans.
Wow.
You know, and so it was a confusing time for, I think, Americans in general.
When you were talking about going through the villages, it reminded me of the Lieutenant Calley incident. And I could see why he would snap and commit the massacre that he did. Because
the thing that I don't want to say haunts me about that, but always troubles me, is that we always had the characters around who had great value, no matter what the tragedy was. Yeah. And we did too. I know what it's like to lose guys senselessly and senselessly. You go in these villages and help them, the doctor treats them, and when you walk through, somebody shoots the last guy in the back. Yeah. And it just angers you. Yeah. And we've burned villages, but when we burned them, it was always under controlled approval because we found out they were VC villages. Right. And they'd burn those things down. And yet at the same time, we had the Sergeant Rikers. Yeah. The Smitties that I talked about, that was my mentor, that guys would want to beat up, and he'd say, you aren't doing that. You know, that always had the head. Somehow that group didn't have it. They lost it. Huh. I don't know what a psychologist would say, the psychology behind it, because there were guys who wanted to do stuff like that. Yeah.
I'm not saying that he was justified in doing it.
No, that's right. But there was nobody that stood up. Not even the people who later on regretted doing it. And I've always thought, what would I have done if all my buddies started doing that? Yeah. I'd like to think that I would say I wouldn't do that. Yeah. But, you know, my dad always said there's a split second between a hero and a coward. And he said everybody in combat does both. Yeah. At one time or another. Dad always, I mean, I always remembered that as when I got to Vietnam. Yeah. That Dad said there's a split second. There's one of those things all of a sudden you do it, and then there's other times your knees go limp and you don't do it. You know, you don't get up and run over there. And so I think there's something like that that snaps with guys too. I had guys who wanted to, in the movie A Platoon, you saw where they beat this guy to death. There were guys who wanted to do that, but there was always said, I mean, we had squad leaders say that you aren't doing that. You aren't going to do that. And then there were guys that wanted out bad enough, and when I became a squad leader, I had a guy who wanted out bad enough, and he kept crybabying and complaining, and he kept saying, "I'm going to shoot myself." And I said, "Quit talking about it, just do it." I always felt bad about this. He shot himself. He shot himself through the hand.
Oh.
And of course, he says, "I was cleaning my rifle," but I just told him, "Quit talking about it, just do it. I'm tired of you crybabying." You know? And lo and behold, he goes off and does that.
Yeah.
And I really felt terrible about that. I don't think I drove him to it.
You could just as easily have driven him away from it by slapping him verbally like
that. Yeah, that's true. So, there's always guys who did that, but there was always somebody. It could be an officer. We had good, in any unit, you have some really crummy people. Yeah. And it's not because they weren't trained. That's their characteristic was crummy when they came in.
Right. Right.
And so but we always had officers who were tremendously dignified characters. And I always had squad leaders. I was fortunate in that regard. I don't know a squad leader in our entire platoon we ever had that was not a very great value, strong personality, and that's kind of everybody looks to. If people want to do something, and those are the guys that says, "You're not doing that." So those guys really impacted me a lot. So when I became a squad leader, I thought of things like that, in those times.
So you were in Vietnam how many months?
I was in Vietnam about 4 months
Okay.
when I got wounded.
Okay.
And then I was sent, after I got out of that mesh unit, I was sent to Yokosuka, Japan for a month recovering. And I was sent back. I probably didn't have to have been. My story is, and there again, what are you thinking sort of thing. Yeah. But I've been in Vietnam, I've been in combat, I've been wounded, I'm recovering from it, and they put me out on some unloading trucks, which that wasn't demeaning to me. I didn't mind that. Yeah. But it's the guys who were out there who were commanding me, was treating me like I was a recruit.
Yeah.
And I was getting kind of tired of that.
Yeah.
And they would give me all this work to do, and then they wouldn't do it. They'd go off do something else. And they had the rank, that was why, but they hadn't been to Vietnam.
They'd probably never seen anything like what you'd seen.
And so I went to the doctor and said, "I'm not taking this anymore. Either get me an assignment, I mean a real assignment in the Marine Corps, or send me home." He said, "I can't send you home. I don't have the authority to do that." And I said, "Well, get me out of here." He said, "Well, the only thing I can do," he says, "is sign your papers and send you back to Vietnam." And I said, "Then send me back to Vietnam, because I'm not doing this anymore." Yeah. And he signed my papers. I can still remember stepping off that helicopter with all my gear on and everything. I'm thinking, what in the world? But what I didn't know was, the minute I got back, they made me the squad leader, because I had the time, experience, things like that. And so they made me the squad leader. What I didn't know was what he signed on my medical records was that I was never to have combat duty again.
Wow.
And so they sent me back, and nobody looked at the records.
Huh.
Until I'd been in the field for probably 6 months. And through combat over and over and over again, And I wasn't bemoaning that, they sent me back. I said, "That's what I want you to do." But then somebody doing records decided pull mine and get it, and they saw it. And so my lieutenant got an immediate call from Battalion and said, "Get him out of there now." the lieutenant said, "What have you done?" I said, "I don't know. I have no clue." And it was, we were caught on top of a place called Mudder's Ridge, and it's another one of those that the entirety time of Vietnam, different people served on Mudder's Ridge, and it was one battle after another. And I'm always thinking, why didn't we ever hold that thing? But anyways, we were on Mudder's Ridge. We couldn't get off of it. The enemy had kind of camped around the base, and we were fighting pitched battles, trying to run patrols down to see where they were at. Yeah. And so they said, "You got to get out of here." And so 2 helicopters were coming in, Chinooks. Yeah. The first one landed, and some guys got on it, and it took off, and they shot it down. I still remember that thing's falling, going down, and in the valley below, and the second one landed. And my lieutenant said, "That's the one you're supposed to get on." I said, "I'm not getting on that." And he said, "If you don't get on it, it may be weeks before another one we get it." I said, "I don't care. I'm not getting on it." Yeah. I mean, the other one had just been shot down. Yeah. And so that one made it out, actually. It was being fired on pretty heavy. Wow. But it made it out, and if I'd got on it, it probably made it out. But I had to wait another week or so, and then got out.
So when you first got in the field, did you have a base that you were operating out of, or were you just...
We had a base that was in called Dong Ha or Camp Carroll. Okay. But we never went to the base. Okay. So
you were just constantly out on patrol.
We were constantly in the jungle, and we actually to this day, even in the reunions, are called Rent a Battalion, because they used our battalion affixed with other groups, and one of those groups was the 101st Airborne, the Army. Okay. And when Khe Sanh was being opened up, Khe Sanh was under a 77-day siege and bombardment, and that's some of the stuff we were doing in the hills. We were trying to find where they were firing all this stuff from, and so we were defending mountaintops at the time that were constantly under attack, and so they said they're going to liberate Khe Sanh. They're going to break it open. And the 101st Airborne, and I was part of this operation, the 101st Airborne was on one side of Route 9 going into Khe Sanh, going in. We were on the other side, Fox Company, 2nd Battalion, 3rd Marines. And what I remember distinctly, this is different in Army and Marines, what I remember distinctly in that whole operation was, on that side of the road, there was hundreds of helicopters. There were Hueys everywhere. Probably not hundreds, but there were dozens. Yeah. They were everywhere. On our side, you were lucky to just see one. And I mean, the Army, of course, they were mechanized. They were units, and that's what I remember about the 101st Airborne is that, boy, they had the helicopter gunships that were everywhere.
Well, it's equipment and don't know what to do with it.
And we'd have one kind of circling around every now and then, and so we were in the field all the time. For our rest, they would either put us on a bridge guard duty to just do perimeter around a bridge, or a artillery place like. They were often called landings on LZs. LZ Ziegler, and we would. That was our rest and relaxation. And of course, we hated it if they gave it to us at an LZ, because that's where the big guns were. Oh yeah. And so your rest was sleeping all night long while the guns.
Boom, boom, boom.
Yeah, while the guns were firing, and. And so the bridge duty wasn't too bad, but it was that kind of duty. And so a lot of times we felt like we happenstance ran into the enemy. We were running pitched battles all the time. But I think they knew. They had the groups out there in the jungle hiding out and listening for the enemy. And when they locate them, they were constantly moving us here. Hotel would get moved over here, and Echo, and we'd say, wonder why they're doing all this kind of movement. Well, it wouldn't take long. they'd use us to run into them, and then them to catch the enemy as they're retreating out of the area, you know. So they knew where they were most of the time, evidently.
Wow.
And so it was constant pitched battles, and day after day, and so we, you know, we saw lots of combat, and in that setting.
Did they move you around by helicopter?
No, not most of the time.
Most of the time, just marching?
In a pitched battle would start, the helicopters would come in,
Okay.
because then they're getting this company to move them over here, because they know that they're going to be fleeing that pitched battle, the enemy would be, or they're trying to box them in.
Would you sooner have approached on foot or in a helicopter assault?
You know, and there again, that depended on the area.
Yeah.
There were times they sent us on foot up to the mountains, and it just took so long.
Yeah.
And it was so hard, we couldn't hardly cut our way through sometimes. When my company was in that battle for Foxtrot Ridge, I was going to mention to you about the platoon. At the end of platoon, that battle that you see was written off of the defense of Foxtrot Ridge.
Okay.
You can actually read it in the book. Okay. But the guy who set that up was Captain Dale Dye. Then Captain Dale Dye was Sergeant Dale Dye, and he was in 2nd Battalion, 3rd Marines. He was an Echo company. They were the company that relieved my company that was being hit so hard in enemy assault.
Okay.
And they fought their way and chopped their way through the jungle all night long to get to our company for relief, which was a feat in itself, because you get ambushed. They know you're coming.
Yeah.
And Dale Dye was in that. So he was in part of the defense of Foxtrot Ridge. They used Dale Dye to set the whole scene, all of that scene in platoon at the end of that enemy assault. And he actually is in the movie. They used him as the captain of the company.
Oh,
at
really?
the end, you see him. That's Dale Dye.
Huh.
And so that's kind of an interesting scenario, because you see a lot of stuff that happened there that really did happen on that ridge. Yeah. And but they moved us so much that way by foot in the mountains. And sometimes it was maybe so that we could catch the enemy by surprise.
Right.
Because they knew where the helicopters were going.
Oh, yeah.
We'd watch them. The other thing was, there were lots of times we didn't want a helicopter over us, because the enemy knew you were there. You couldn't stay, we never stayed in one spot 2 nights. If you did, you were hit by the enemy. And usually rocket or mortar fire. So it was constant moving. You know, digging a hole, filling it in, digging a hole, filling it in. And so it really was a Spartan's life. My wife's amazed. She says, "You can't stand bugs now." And I said, "I know. I can't imagine." You know, and if a bug bites, it comes to me first. And it was that way there too. You know, and it got so the leeches, you didn't even care, because the leech. Yeah, when you first got one, you'd almost panic. Got a leech over you. Guys look at you, go, "Oh," you know, and some guys even begin to name them, you know, but a leech didn't bother you. You didn't know he was there. I guess he'd suck a little bit of blood and he'd drop off. But the bugs, they'd bite you, they'd buzz, you know, and so they'd drive you nuts, and so it was you were dirty all the time. I can remember not bathing for weeks, and we finally got to bathe in a river, and then you'd have to have it was a hassle, because you'd have to have a whole unit circle the area with weapons and everything, because guys got ambushed trying to take baths in rivers.
Oh, I bet.
And so you'd bathe, and then when you got through, you would circle the area with your unit, and that unit would bathe in the river. And it got so that it was better just to stand in the rain.
But you had some rain too.
Oh, it poured. I've never seen, I've got pictures of the monsoon, and I am not exaggerating when I say that it rained so hard that you couldn't hardly see your hand in front of you.
Yeah.
And one time I remember on the side of a mountain, just that you know, that Spartan life, you're so tired because you walk all day, you probably don't get a few hours sleep at night, and we're on the side of a mountain, so we dug places for our feet to rest on, or you'd wake up sliding up. And it rained so hard, I think it was 2 or 3 inches of water coming down the side of that mountain, just running, just kept your head out, you know. And that was so miserable that the next time we stopped, I took a machete and made a bed. I, you know, put some stakes down and engineered a tied platform and put little those stakes across it and filled it with leaves, and then put a little poncho liner over top of it to keep the sun off. And next thing I knew, a guy'd come up and he said, "Can I borrow that machete?" And he's building one. Another guy said, "Can I borrow that machete?" And he's building one. Because when it rained that night, you were out of the water, you know, and it was, and so it was a Spartan life. We never got a hot meal, ever. The only time was when it was bridge security, and that's where Sergeant Riker type saved the day for us. The only rest they gave us was to Khe Sanh one time. They said, "Will you run bridge security?" And so we said yes, on the trucks going into Khe Sanh. And when we got in there were mountains of food, boxes, you know, it's going out to different units, and hot meal stuff sitting there for units. And my sergeant told the guy next to me and myself, "See that Jeep over there? Jump in it." And we jumped in it, and he started it. I don't know whose Jeep it was. And he drove all the way down there and said, "We're with such and such unit. We're here to get our food." And they loaded the back of that Jeep with all this hot stuff. And he drove that thing up, parked it where it was. We took all of that food out, put it in the truck we'd rode in because it was going to take us back to our unit. Yeah. And when we got back to our unit, we took the hot meal to them. I don't know who that hot meal was for. and somebody didn't get their hot meal,
I hope it was the general.
but it, you know, those were the experiences. I look back and think that was like movie stuff. You know, that,
yeah, it really is.
That Sergeant Quinn was his name, and that would just, he was fearless, you know, and things like that. I would have thought, "Oh my goodness, they'll court-martial me for stealing a Jeep." Not him. He's get in the Jeep and go get the food, you know.
That's funny.
So,
I would think that a helicopter assault would be so unnerving. I mean, you're up there in full view. They're shooting at you.
It is when
you
you're
got to
in
get
a
down
hot
on the
zone.
ground, get out of that thing.
It is when you're in a hot zone, and they never hit the ground. You jump out before, you know, 4 feet from the ground. Yeah. And the first time in a Chinook, I'm sitting in there, and these guys are sitting on their helmets, and it's really uncomfortable. And I'm thinking, I'm not going to sit on my helmet. I'm new. I'm green. Yeah. And I hear this twang, and then I hear a twang.
Oh,
and I said to a guy, you can't, you know, it's real loud. I had to yell. I said, "What is that noise?" And he said, "Oh, that's bullets coming through the fuselage." And I took my helmet off. I know why they were all sitting on their helmet now. I don't know if that would have stopped it or not, but you know, that was unnerving. But the landing zone in hot was intense. Yeah. Because you're jumping off, you don't know where it's coming from, you know. And training is all it does, because you go out and everybody does their job, you know. And to this day, it's that way. And
that's what gets you through. If everybody does their job, one guy lets down.
It is, and even if a guy gets hurt or shot, you know, the other guys are dependent that you're where you're supposed to be. That's the hard part, you know, because you really do want to stop and help a guy. Yeah. And sometimes you do.
Now, if you did do a helicopter assault, it would probably be with Hueys?
Most of the time in a hot zone, it was with Hueys.
Okay.
Most of ours were often with the Chinook, where you had 20 or 30 guys at a time
Okay.
on one helicopter, because what they were doing with that was taking it to a mountaintop and immediately putting a full force on that mountaintop to block the enemy.
Okay, I see.
And so very seldom in a Chinook would it be a hot zone unless they caught you. And that happened once in a while.
Okay.
We got caught with trying to get off of them, you know, under fire, and that's a little harder.
Yes, I would be. All right, probably ought to stop here. It sounds as though you were around the base of Khe Sanh for quite a while, a month or two, or
the whole time.
Okay, in that 4-month
we
period.
were assigned to that. Well, when I first got there, the Tet Offensive was starting.
Okay.
And we were assigned just outside of Way City. Now, history, years later, I know what they were doing with us. Because we didn't get into the inner city, Way City fight, which was horrendous.
Yeah.
We just were not trained then for street fighting. But they knew, our leadership knew, whatever and however long it took, they're going to drive them out. And when they drove them out, they wanted units out there. So we were stationed in an area, is all sandy, close to the ocean.
Yeah.
When those units tried to break out, we were going to have units that would catch them, and that's exactly what did happen.
Okay.
That became my first combat experiences of those pitched encounters, and of the enemy, and a lot of that was due to them coming out. And then we found VC villages all over the place that they didn't know existed. We were running into those. But then we went to Khe Sanh and spent our whole time in the mountains.
These battles that you would get involved with, 15 minutes at a time, 3 hours. So what's
that's in? They
just
varied.
varied.
Sometimes you get shot at in a minute. All they're doing is trying to delay you.
Right.
And so you know, our guys, we don't just rush into gunfire. You get down, you assess what's going on, you return fire, they're gone.
Right.
Then there's times that it's 2-3 hour firefight, and then there was times it was half a day. It was just continuous pitched going on, and when that happens, they're pretty serious. The enemy got pretty serious. That just wasn't hit and run. And it usually was intentional. They were intentional, or we'd stumbled onto a staging area, and they were there. You know, a large force would be there. They were often in small forces, and then they would break off in small groups and regather in a large group. And so it was those in the jungle. Most of the time, they did not like, the enemy didn't, and it stands to reason, we owned the air.
Right.
They did not like daytime battles, because then we just call the artillery in and the air support.
Right.
And it was over, you know, after that. But what's amazing is how they planned. The enemy could plan a battle on the backside of a mountain, so our artillery can't reach us.
Okay.
And they knew, and it'd be, you could look at a map, and we got so that when we planned treks through the jungle, we knew spots that were going to be more dangerous than other spots because of the site where it would be. So they tried to put fire bases around, so at any given point you're supported. But where we were at on that mountaintop, the back side of it, no fire base could reach that. And so, by the way, it had to come in. So through the night, there was no air support, and the fire support could hit around areas, but could not hit in the direct area where they were assaulting. And that lasted all night. The battle did. The battle I was wounded in lasted a day and a half.
Wow.
And it was pretty pitched. We probably had easily 6 or 8 killed and maybe 15 wounded in that battle. And then and a lot of it, you know, we had guys that were wounded by our own artillery, and sometimes by our own shooting, because guys get into the nose to nose, and we're supposed to be giving them cover, and we're spraying a whole area and find out our guys were in there, you know, and so that becomes it's confusing in any battle, because we had guys at the top of the hill. I was halfway down. The guys we were going to rescue were at the bottom of the hill and were surrounded, and we were rushing down to rescue them, and there was so much smoke already, you know, it just hanging in the areas like fog from artillery, jets, napalm, their rockets, you know, our mortars, and so it becomes confusing on movement, you know, people moving around and that sort of thing. You know, hopefully it's your own guys.
And in most of those cases, would you actually be able to see the enemy? Or
very seldom.
You just knew approximately where they were and where the fire was coming from?
Very seldom. We would see them sometimes darting in open areas across, but very seldom did you really see an enemy.
Yeah.
My friend that was wounded, that I joined with, when he was wounded, they were trapped in a bomb crater. And the enemy were just feet from them, and they couldn't even look over, because the couple of guys that tried to look over got shot by a sniper. So all they could do is, you know, hold their weapon up and fire, but the enemy were throwing hand grenades in.
Yeah.
And several of the guys, this was just what all their duty was. Well, some guys were firing, they were catching the enemy hand grenades and tossing them out.
Yeah.
And so it was that kind of closeness for them, and they saw the enemy up close. The only good thing was their hand grenades were crummy. They took forever to explode, so that always gave us time to pick one up and throw it. And when they did explode, sometimes, because they probably made them in a cave somewhere in the field, they didn't always have good explosive firepower to them,
right,
like ours would. Ours could devastate you.
They weren't consistent, at least.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so, you know, that gave our guys a lot of leeway to be able to not be injured by one.
Right.
So you very seldom saw the enemy, and almost every time, anytime I saw a live enemy, it was wounded, a wounded enemy that we'd got.
Right.
And so most time you're shooting at ghost. You're shooting in an area you see the muzzle flashes coming out of.
Right.
And you know, if a squad leader gets the chance, you can think ahead enough to know where to put guys to put the most firepower in on something. But on top of it, you get guys wounded or something, so you're taking care of that. You're ordering, and so it's often confusing, more than it sounds like. Well ordered.
Well,
you know.
Did they kind of thread in and out? Were they kind of around you?
That was the thing in a jungle. There was not a distinctive line.
Yeah, it wasn't like a trench over here and a trench over here.
That's why sometimes the guy could get wounded by his own men coming up behind guys, and they'd fire on you. You don't wait to look to see.
Right.
I wonder if that's one of ours. You know, you fire ahead first and then ask questions. And so it was crazy. It was just crazy. And now when you're in a setting position in a circle, that was different, because everybody's in a foxhole, but when I was wounded, we had just moved up on the hill. So we had guys up here, we had guys over here, we had guys down there.
Yeah.
And we were rushing, and we were actually moving down the hill when they got ambushed. And we were rushing down, which they know you're going to do that, so they often are set up for it, to ambush that group. And when I was injured, they had so much machine gun fire coming in. We were laying behind a log a tree that had fallen over,
Right.
And I elbowed this guy, and I said, he's got to run out of ammo. They always do, and they got to change the belt. And I said, when it stops, we got a split second. When it stops, let's set up and just try to pour in fire in the area we think he's coming. I wasn't about to look up over that thing,
Yeah.
you know. And this guy said, okay. And I mean, it sounded like a good plan.
Yeah.
And so it did. When he stopped, I knew he was changing the belt.
Yeah.
And we both just set up and you know, to fire, and something exploded next to us. I thought a guy over there dropped a hand grenade.
Yeah.
And boy, it blew my helmet. I had probably 20 feet in the air, and I mean, it went off as close from me to the corner of that wall right there.
Yeah.
And it was so, that's the reason I thought it was somebody dropped a hand grenade accidentally, because it was so close. And this guy sitting over here, boy, he was bleeding from his head, and I looked, and all of a sudden I realized I'd been hit, and it was an RPG had come in.
Okay.
And I don't think it was planned. I think it was just a random shot, or of
Huh.
the Lord, and it hit there. And what is the danger of an RPG is not just the shrapnel. An RPG is made to penetrate with phosphorus, metal plating, and then it explodes.
Okay.
So what an RPG will do when it hits is explode and explode, because the nose explodes first. And we had guys that got injured far worse by the phosphorus explosion than the shrapnel. You can't put it out.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And it was awful. I've never seen anything like it in my life. It was, I mean, it's horrible. All we could do was pack it with mud, pour
Yeah.
water on mud, and get the air oxygen off of it.
Yeah.
Guys screaming and you know, swinging at you and everything, and all you can do is try to help him by packing that crazy thing with mud.
Yeah.
And that thing hit that close, and the only thing I can assume is that the entire blast went down into the ground.
Huh.
And the shrapnel hit me in the side and came out over here.
So you didn't get any phosphorus, but
I didn't get a
but
bit
you
of
got the shrapnel.
phosphorus. Yeah, it all just went up me here and got this way. It's amazing. It hit there, but nothing on my left side got hit.
Huh.
Everything on my right side got hit. And I think it's because of the way I was
Yeah,
standing.
yeah.
Because this leg was peppered, and pieces went through this wrist. And then I got pieces in this. And here's the thing, I still remember this. Here's the thing, my lieutenant would say, Whitlock, zip up your flak vest. And it was 120
Yeah.
degrees in that jungle, and I couldn't hardly stand it. And I had my flak vest unzipped.
Uh-huh.
And the shrapnel hit me here and came out over here. If I'd have had that thing zipped up, I at least wouldn't have gotten this. It didn't penetrate the lungs. It just skirted it went in the flesh, but it skirted the ribs.
Yeah.
And came out, then hit this arm and came out there.
Wow.
And so I was very fortunate, just peppered stuff, like
Yeah.
a shotgun
Yeah.
round. And the guy here probably got less, but it all got him in the head, and so he was bleeding profusely. And so we, you know, guys were to us right away and were patching us up. And to this day, when I shave, and this is not PTSD, this
Yeah.
is just the memory. If I hadn't have been injured, and you know, I don't say the Lord caused me to get injured so I didn't die.
Yeah.
I'm saying I was injured, but because I wasn't with those guys when all that happened.
That's right.
But I had a piece of shrapnel sticking out of me, a shard about that long, probably an eighth of an inch. The scar's right here, from where your soft part of your throat is,
Right.
right there. If that was an eighth of an inch higher, it would have went right through my throat. And it didn't. It stuck out. And I remember this buddy of mine pulled it out, and he said, "You want to keep that?" I should have. But I was being a tough Marine. I said, "I don't want that thing," you know. And he threw it away. And so they're patching me up, and these are the funny things like I looked at and laugh at that stupidity now. But another guy come crawling up, and you got to remember we're in hot water. It really was, you're dying of thirst.
Yeah.
You're expending body fluid, probably unbelievable in that heat. And this guy comes crawling up to me, and and I see him coming, and I think he's going to say, "Whitlock, are you okay?"
Yeah.
You know, but he crawled up, and the funny thing, I don't have any ill feel toward him, or even then I don't remember ever feeling ill. But he crawls up and he says, "Hey, Whitlock, you're going to get medevaced out. Can I have your canteen?" And I remember saying, yeah, you can have it. And then later on, before I got back to the top of the hill, I was dying of thirst. And I think I gave my canteens away, you know. And so I said, yeah, you can have them, you know. So they patched me all up, and a fella come down, and I couldn't hardly walk on this leg. And so he said, well, can you hold on to my ammo belt? And I said, yes. He's a black guy that had thighs on him like a running back. I was short. I bet he wasn't any taller than me, but big.
Yeah.
That's what I remember is his big, thick thighs. And he said, can you hang on to my belt? And I said, I think so. And that guy took off running, and I was like I remember I couldn't hold on with this one, but I was hanging on with this one. And hopping on this leg, you know, but he never missed a beat, and he's heading up that hill. And then there was a bomb crater, and a machine gunner knew we were coming through. Everybody trying to come through it, he was opening up on.
Yeah.
And so we were at the edge of the bomb crater, and a guy, they yelled at the top of the hill, and they said, we're going to give covering fire. And when we do, you guys take off running through that opening. We yelled up, said, we're going to do it. So we're all hunkered down, we're waiting, machine gunners firing. And I still remember telling my friend, man, I hope they're alternating fire up there. Because what'll happen is everybody will open up and you all run out of ammo at the same time.
Yeah.
And they know just like we do. They'll start hearing a click, 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 all the magazines coming out. And I said, because I would, as a squad leader, I'd say, okay, you fire, you wait, you fire, you wait. And then you've got alternating fire going, you know. Well, they didn't. And we didn't know that. So we get up and we start running, and man, they're opening up, machine gunner stops, and right in the middle of that clearing, what I start hearing is click, 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 click. No. And the machine gunner opens up again, and we're dead in the clearing. And all I remember is we're laying down, and dirt is kicking up everywhere. And amazing, nobody's getting hit. But one guy panics and jumps up and runs and gets hit, trying to before he got to that bomb crater. And a guy comes crawling up over from my right, and he's a sniper, ours. Yeah. And he comes crawling up, and he says, everybody hold steady. He said, I'm going to get that gunner. And so you got to see this scene. I'm laying flat, and he is right on this side of me. The machine gunner is somewhere over there, and he's aiming over me. Yeah. And he's laying there, and he's not using me for a sandbag, but because he's laying there, he's aiming like this over me, and all of a sudden he starts screaming, horrid screams, and he's writhing and screaming and twisting, and he's been hit. And so another guy rolls him over to find out where he's hit at, and the bullet, he's laying on his belly, had gone right down his chest and hit him in the crotch.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
And I never forgot what he said. This guy says, are you okay? And he says, it feels like 1,000 elephants are stepping on my Oh. And of course I'm laughing now. I wasn't laughing then, but the other thing was, all of a sudden it occurred to me, he was aiming over me. That round had to have went right over my back.
Yeah. Yeah.
There couldn't have been that much space. That it had to have. because that's where he was laying. And so I'm thinking
Wow.
again, dodged another one. And so eventually they fire again and we get out and they get me to the top of the hill. And the awful part is at the top of the hill, evidently I was one of the first wounded to get up there. Yeah. They only had the dead bodies laying there. So they laid me among and of course I knew them. One of them was a guy's, he only had 1 day left. He was going out.
Oh.
And the other one was my gunny sergeant, Gunny Ziegler. And they named the LZ base after him. It's called LZ Ziegler. And he was there and had died. And so they laid me there, and the helicopter, matter of fact, it wasn't a medevac helicopter, which is the dust-offs, they call them.
Yeah.
And you probably heard guys say that. They were calling for the nearest, and they would do that in combat zones. A helicopter maybe had dropped a load or something like that, would be going back to their base, and they'd get a call, and they'd say, we got some guys that got to get out now. And they would just wing down. I mean, those guys, if you ever interview the pilots of those helicopters in Vietnam, they have my biggest respect.
Yeah.
They would, and this guy was in a Chinook.
Oh my gosh.
It was amazing. There was not another wounded guy. I was the only one. I mean, it would have been easy to say, look, guys, you're under fire. This is a huge Chinook.
Yeah.
Is the guy's life threatening? They said that I'm not going to try to land down there. And, if there's dead bodies there, we'll get them. But to risk the Chinook and the crew and all that. But that guy landed. I still remember he came down and landed, and they ran out of that thing and picked me up and carried me in, and they carried all those bodies in too.
Right.
And put them in there, and so they got me out and landed in the mesh unit. Wow. And it was surreal again, because if you've ever watched MASH. They bring in all these guys in, they're laying everywhere, and they're doing a triage of who's the worst. Well, that's exactly what it was. Huh. Identical to that. And that's how I knew my friend was wounded. They eventually brought him in. And I knew he was caught down there, but I didn't know how he was. But I was brought in, and they laid me over here and on a gurney of some sort. And another helicopter flew in, and they just started unloading guys. And then another one flew in, and the amazing thing was it wasn't all ours. There were so many actions going on. Right. It was wounded after wounded. And I'm not exaggerating when I say that there were probably, at that spot, just that moment, 30 wounded guys. Wow. And some of them pretty severe. And so they're bringing them in, they're triaging them. And I look up, and they're bringing these guys in on stretchers, and I recognize my buddy, and he's in a lot of pain. He was shot in the back of the foot, and he says he cannot believe I said what I did, because I'm a humorist. You have to understand that in the worst of circumstances, I'll think of the dumbest thing to say, and I leaned up and on one elbow and yelled, "Wombles!" And he looked at me. He looked over at me, and I said, "We've taken this buddy thing way too far." That's when I told him that, and he didn't grin, because they'd already given me a shot, so I was doing pretty good, and so they hadn't given him a shot yet, and he was still in a lot of pain, but they do the best they can, and they did do a good job patching us, treating us, the guys that they treated, and they got us out of there as quick as they could to what they call a decent hospital. Matter of fact, the hospitals they got us to from that unit was air blowing. If you see these buildings that are just air-filled walls, well, that's all they were.
Oh, really?
I thought, man, if one mortar hits near this,
the whole thing's coming at
It will.
But that's what they were. They were just air-filled units, the walls and everything, and they were air conditioned, which was pretty nice.
Oh, wow.
And they put us in there, and I got my first shower I probably had in months.
Yeah.
In the next morning, and I had to hobble to do that because they said, this guy said, we don't bathe. He was a Navy guy, you know.
Yeah.
He says, we don't bathe you. If you can make it to the shower, you can give yourself a bath. So I made it to the shower. I wanted a bath bad.
Oh, man.
And so, you know, there's a lot of surreal, there's a lot of funny, and there's a lot of, you have to take it all in the stride.
Yeah, it's not one-dimensional at all.
Oh, yeah.
And people
None
get this
of it is.
movie mindset that it's like this and thus and so, and it's not. It's just a mixed bag. What? How would you describe your being wounded? I know I've been in accidents where I go into shock and I don't really feel what's going on.
You do. You're exactly right.
I've heard people say that, well, Herschel's dad was hit by a tree burst, and he said it felt like somebody just hit him with a baseball bat, but he didn't realize he was wounded.
That's exactly what I was going to say. The nearest that I could get to it, because I got hit this way one time in a job, I felt like somebody swung a 2x4 as hard as they could and just hit me right in the chest.
Huh.
That was the concussion. The shrapnel doesn't do that. Concussion does.
Okay.
And it's like a bullet shot going through a guy. Most of the time, guys like the movie show you flying. You don't.
Yeah.
They just fall.
Yeah.
The bullet goes through you so fast, but the concussion, when it hits you from a blast, really moves you. And I thought I was hit with something the same way, like a ball bat was hit right in the chest. And I didn't realize initially, I mean, you know, seconds, however long it takes, that I was wounded. It stunned me. You know, your head's spinning. Now, I had been hit like that once before by a blast, but not shrapnel. I was blowing out of the back of the truck. We were getting on a truck, getting ready to go to Khe Sanh, and they fired those Katyusha rockets like they shoot into Israel. And those, one of those came in, it hit on the other side of the truck, and it hit a water buffalo, the water tank, they called them a water buffalo. It hit that thing direct. All I remember is fire and sparks going everywhere, and I was just getting on a truck, but something hit me and blew me so far back from the truck, and I was stunned. I can remember coming, kind of your head coming back together, or realizing where you're at. Well, that was the concussion. Well, that's what hit me, and I thought it was the concussion. And then I realized I can't move my arm, and I can't move my leg, and I realized I've been wounded. I was hit.
Did you feel pain?
There was
burning?
absolutely no pain. Initially.
Initially.
There was no pain initially because I think the initial hit, the numbness, and I felt myself going into shock. And I kept trying to talk myself out of it. I can remember doing that. Talking myself out, you can't be passing out, you can't be passing out, you can't be passing out. And it's kind of this sickening feeling in your stomach, you know. And I realized that I was hit. And the first thing I wanted to do, my mind was clear enough when I realized I was clear, is to take a breath of air, because so many guys got wounded and couldn't breathe. Their lung got hit or something, and I thought, and I realized I'm bleeding in the chest, and so I just took a big breath of air, and I realized my lungs are okay.
Wow!
So I could breathe. And amazing on the helicopter, because I was hit in the chest here and it was bleeding. They came and turned me on my right side. And I knew why they were doing it. I gave them a thumbs up, but they didn't need to. They were doing it because if I was hit through the lung here and I turned on this side, the blood would choke me to death in the other lung.
Okay.
And so the gunner on that came and unhooked himself and came and turned me over, make sure if I was bleeding in a lung, it was on this side. So I took a breath. I knew that was okay. But then the adrenaline kicks in. I think that's why there was no pain. I think if I could have moved the hand and leg, I could have went on and started firing my weapon. I couldn't find it anyways. But then that guy, the adrenaline's kicked in. The guy has pulled me up the hill where all the adrenaline's flashing, doing all of that. It's an adrenaline high. You don't feel anything. But when I got on the helicopter, I realized I'm out of there. Mm. And the adrenaline evidently came down, starts coming down. The burning was just horrendous.
Oh, I bet.
It started stinging and burning, and you know, I mean, I could have screamed, but my mind was saying that ain't gonna stop the burning. Yeah. You know, so I didn't scream. I just clenched my teeth. I remember. That's when the pain started. Was then, and I think the numbness. You know, you got some dead friends laying there. You got some other guys that's been wounded. You don't know what's happened to some of your other friends, and the numbness of that in your mind. There were guys. One guy of ours that was eventually killed and ended up with a Silver Star out of it. And it's not he's trying to be a hero. He was wounded, and I'm not certain now. I know what you know. He was so concerned. He wasn't feeling anything. And he's so concerned for his friends, and he's so focused on the enemy, he charged them and took out a couple of enemy machine gun places, you know, before an enemy got him. And I'm thinking I could have went on and fought. When they got me up into the bomb crater, that black guy that got me that far dropped me there because some guys were going to come down and get us the rest away. And he went back down and get some more guys. Well, he dropped his rifle because it was cumbersome to him. Apparently, there's again another thing. I would never drop my rifle. Yeah. You just always keep your weapon with you. But anyways, he dropped it, and I actually picked it up, thinking I can help defend these guys, and I could not hold it. And I held it this way, but this hand wouldn't do anything. It would just limp. Yeah. Like this. There was no movement, and I couldn't make it move. I couldn't do anything. And I realized I couldn't fire it if I wanted to. And unfortunately, the guys never did come down. So I crawled on there was a big bomb crater at the top of that hill. Right. And it wasn't a long, like, 100 yards or anything like that, maybe 20 or 30 at best. But I crawled the rest of the way to get over that, and then they pulled me over it. But the emotion, there wasn't, my emotions were numbed. Fear was numbed. Panic was numbed. There was just none of that, you know, in that. But when the adrenaline went down, it all changed. You know, everything did. What you think, get me out of here sort of thing. You know, you're on that helicopter. And the pain really did start. And the doctors didn't help it a bit when, because they're, you know, and by that I mean, is amazing. You know, this is kind of rough, the way they do it, but it wasn't like a nice hospital emergency room where they give you a shot and put you out. They didn't put you out. And I remember he stuck his finger in every hole and probed it with his finger, and my adrenaline was gone. Yeah. and I'm thinking, how come he's not numbing me? But the truth of the matter is, when so many wounded are coming in, they have to save that for the guys that are really serious.
And besides that, they don't have time.
That's exactly what it was. Wow. He was feeling, I think, for initial shrapnel that they could maybe feel and find. And if they didn't find it, they just stitched it. And so because of that, I've still got shrapnel in my chest. I still got shrapnel in my arm.
I was wondering about, did you have any of it that kind of worked out over the years?
No, I always worried about that, and I've had a number of doctors tell me that doesn't do that. It has to be almost under the skin to do that. Okay. The body builds a fatty tissue around an injury and protects the rest of the body from that. Okay. And so I do have problems with it, but there's not been any. Now I tell you what I can't have. I cannot have an MRI because an MRI
Magnetic.
is magnetic, and if it's magnetic metal, it'll pull it right out of your body.
Out of you, yeah.
If it's not magnetic, this is what they told me at the hospital, if it's not magnetic, it'll make it red hot. Because it's so much magnetism there, it'll become red hot. And so they said I'll never be able to have an MRI.
About metal detectors at airports?
Yeah, well, they don't pick it up because they don't make it that sensitive.
Okay.
I guess, but I have had a prison ministry where it does.
Huh.
Because a prison, they'll try to sneak needles in, hypodermic needles, you know, and it'll pick. And so I can remember I was going into prison and I had to completely disrobe. And it still picked it up. And I told them, I said, I've got shrapnel in my body.
Yeah.
And I said, will it pick that up? They said, yeah, it will.
Huh.
So they excused me on that one. So, you know, there's guys that just have far more severity in their injuries than I do. But I have just like if I'd had severe arthritis. Certain times a year, it's worse than others. Yeah. But that's the reason I say the doctors, I don't bemoan them for it, but they hurt me more because now my adrenaline's gone.
Yeah.
I've not been given a shot, and they're doing all this finger poking, you know. But they really were superb. I can't imagine what those guys went through day after day, hour after hour. Yeah. You know, they just saw the residue of everything constantly. So.
In that first 4 months, what were you most afraid of? Was there a moment when you were just really scared?
The first weeks, I remember I hardly slept because when it was my time for watch, I was awake. Yeah. And then it was this guy's time for watch, I didn't sleep. Yeah. I was awake. Every movement, I was afraid. Is that, you know? And it gets so, these guys would almost act nonchalant. And I got that way too. And the reason was, I remember a friend, some guys woke me up and said, we think we hear movement. And I said, well, listen. No, that's the wind. And I went to sleep, and a guy come up checking the lines. And I heard, and my eyes went open that quick because I heard a twig snap. It was not, it's amazing. It's the most amazing thing. You knew it was a human, not something else. Huh. And so your body would wake up to that, but not the wind. Wow. And so the first weeks was frightening. And then, you know, I think the constant combat finally made you kind of a shell. You just went from day to dark, got sleep, got some food. And then, you know, guys got wounded, guys got killed, and you went on and on and on. And I think most guys, and I begin to say, when's my time coming? It seemed that way. And I know everybody in Vietnam didn't go through that, but 1968 was pretty rough. In the 4 months that I was wounded, our battalion had 85... in the 1 month, had 85 killed and something like 300 wounded. Wow. In that 1 month.
Pretty high.
Yeah, that was tremendously high. Wow. And so if you take that through month after month after month, and guys begin to just become like a shell case, you know. And
I was kind of curious about the short firefights versus the day or 2 or 3 day firefights. Did being longer, was it worse, or did you just sort of get to a point where, well, this is normal, this is what's happening?
It's amazing. When the adrenaline goes down, everybody shakes. Yeah. So the short one, you shook quicker when it was over. But the longer one, because when you have no sleep, you can't hardly keep your eyes open, but one shot's fired and you're wide awake. Yeah. And so you do, most of the time the long ones were because we were in a holding area and they were probing us.
Right.
So you're in a position, firing back, reloading, firing back, hoping they don't mortar you or something. In the quick firefights, it's on the move often. And the defense of the ridge was a defensive area, but what we were not expecting was a massive wave assault of 500-800 enemy soldiers.
Right.
And so it was pretty horrendous and hand-to-hands thing. Amazingly, they defended it. There was only, out of the entire company, there was only at best 30 guys left, maybe.
Wow.
That were not wounded.
Yeah.
You know, could say that they could still fight.
Very, very close.
Okay. Before we get too far from Khe Sanh, what we saw back home were the helicopters, or no, the C-130s, landing, dropping the tail, throwing everything off, and taking off. Did you see any of that?
Every bit of it.
Yeah.
Of course, I was in the mountains mostly, but
Right.
when we were in Khe Sanh a lot. I've never seen anything like that.
Yeah.
That's the most amazing thing that I have. I've got some pictures in my books of it. They never stopped, and the whole time they're being fired on.
Yeah.
Because the enemies in the mountains had their heavy guns, 50 calibers or 80 millimeters aimed, and just locked in.
Yeah.
And those guys are flying, coming right across the tracers. You know, they're flying right through it. And they'd come in to land, and it's like the whole world would erupt. All this firing would start, tracers are flying, they start pumping mortars out. And as they're moving along the runway, all this stuff's coming out the back.
Yeah.
Well, a couple of planes did get hit and burned on the end of the runway, and were still there through the whole time. It was, you know, like a awful monument to look at or something.
Yeah.
And then the planes started flying over and dropping parachutes, low level, in Khe Sanh. Evidently, that was when they were still under siege, pretty heavy, and it got pretty risky. But once we broke through, and the breakthrough was amazing, there was no breakthrough. The enemy pulled out, and they pulled back though, and we secured then out the hills and the mountains immediately around Khe Sanh. There wasn't any more heavy firing like that.
I wonder why they pulled out.
Well, there's two things that happened, and I'm just telling you from a guy that was a ground pounder.
Right.
Not any of the experts have no more behind the scenes than I know. But there's two things that I found. One place when we were walking in, our bombers had devastated them so bad that where could they go? They couldn't dig a hole deep enough for a B-52 not to get to it eventually. They just scatter bombed. They didn't exactly know if they were there or not. They were just bombing all over the place. Yeah. And I walked to a place, and I'm not exaggerating. I mentioned this to my friend not too long ago, and he reiterated, I remember that spot. I could have walked the length of a football field and never touched the ground on dead bodies.
Wow.
They were charred and they were blackened from just decay, but it was almost like a scene out of Goya. It was the most unbelievable thing that I've seen, and you know, it's still to this day vivid in my mind. And I didn't, but what I'm merely saying is, and some of them were blowing out of the trenches. They were laying up out of the trenches, in the ground. And we're walking through, and I was put out on flank as the flank guard, the farthest flank, which I wasn't too pleased about that, be out there by yourself. And I'm walking, and I walked up on this scene, and it was unbelievable. So for one thing, I think our bombs literally devastated them. They couldn't hardly attack with a force that was that devastated.
Right.
The other thing was, we were all given bubonic plague shots, and bubonic plague broke out in that area.
For heaven's sakes.
And the reason was, well, you can imagine, look at all those dead bodies and think
Oh,
of the rats.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Rats were everywhere,
Yeah.
and they were huge. They were absolutely huge. And this is just from some medical people that told me, because they treated some dead that died from bubonic plague, dead soldiers. And they said, I think, the doctor said, I got a suspicion our bombing and the bubonic plague decimated them.
Well, I'll be darned.
They did not have the wherewithal for medicine like we did.
Yeah.
And I had no clue what it would look like. You know, I can tell you that. But that's just what a lowly private was told at the time.
It's always been a little bit of a mystery to me. They were never able to take Khe Sanh. They hit it so horrifically, and then all of a sudden they were just gone.
Yeah.
And
the other thing, I think the Tet Offensive failed them in regards, it decimated their ranks
right.
so bad. It succeeded in the fact it turned America against the war.
Yeah.
And so that's only what I'd say an opinion thought, not something that is, you know. But I do know they gave us shots and they hurt like crazy. I've never had a shot hurt that bad. And when they gave us the bubonic plague shot.
Yeah. Bubonic plague would have hurt worse.
Yes, it was.
So, I guess you got to weigh
Yeah,
that.
you got to weigh that.
So you were wounded, and how long before your squad got hit? And
A week, a little over a week went by.
Yeah.
This was still the ridge. Now we've had a pitched battles going on this ridge. Apparently that ridge top could overlook the LZ that had the fire base on it.
okay.
And the enemy must have wanted it pretty bad. The other was, I still believe that they continued the fight through the next day when Echo Company got there, and they never did that. They always pulled out when daylight come, because then it was our game at that point.
Yeah.
Jets, helicopters, you know, so I suspect, and we were also close to, we found out, was their battalion training and staging area. They had underground tunnels and all that there. But I was wounded. Pitched battles are still going on around this hill, and so my company was ordered to set on top of that hill and hold it. And then that one particular night, they launched the battle. Our company wasn't expecting it, nor they were. Now, to say whether they were ready for it may have been immaterial, because they ran out of ammo. They didn't have enough men to defend it adequately, and they literally fought hand to hand. And actually, some guys snuck down the hill and took weapons out of the dead enemy and crawled back up the hill so they could have weapons. And the enemy may not have realized it, that our guys, another big push, that our guys may not have been able to hold. Maybe we wiped out so many of them they couldn't. I don't know. They never left their enemy dead, the NVA. To give you an idea, I think, of the massiveness, there were 230 bodies still around the hill, enemy. So that alone tells you. And one of my buddies who survived, he was in the other squad. The only way he survived, he and two other guys. And if you can imagine this, they were brand new. They'd never seen a day of combat.
Oh my gosh!
And they get put into that. They got separated because the enemy overran the positions and were up on the hill, and the company had to close the hole up and hold the top, and they couldn't go back, and so they went down the hill and followed the artillery fire of our artillery fire that night. They just through the night. And on the way down, they kept hiding from the enemy because he said all night long there were constant groups coming up the hill and constant groups coming down the hill. He said I'm not exaggerating. He said like a whole group of 30 and 40 going up, but coming down were guys that had bodies on poles, and they were bringing them down. But he said seemed like as many men that was doing that kind of a job as going up to do the fighting. And if we had that many bodies still on the hill, they couldn't get them all. How many were there really? So we don't know. But they, they held the hill, and the whole thing was probably about 2 weeks length. From the time I was wounded to the pitched battles, firing artillery because they saw enemy movement somewhere around that hill, and our company setting on it. But they must have known the strength of our company, where everybody was, and they often did that. That's why they probed. And we captured some. So we captured one time a guy, and all he had was a pencil and a piece of paper. And he was apparently going around, sneaking around the outside edges and marking wherever the foxholes were.
Oh, for heaven's sakes!
When he got caught.
Yeah.
And so this friend of mine matter of fact, he made a career. He ended up making a career of the Marine Corps.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, he survived that. And so did those two young guys that were brand new. What an experience they have to tell.
Oh, I can imagine. Wow.
And the enemy did something that shocked a lot of our guys, a kind thing. This was amazing. This just didn't happen. In any other place, I had battles, we never saw this. But some of the guys that were wounded in the other squads, and my squad was what you'd say was the point of the spear.
Right.
They were the first ones that were hit by the massive wave assault. But there were some guys that were about 3 of them that were severely wounded, and these enemy soldiers actually carried them all the way down through the jungle to Route 9 on the road, and put them on the road and left them with water, knowing that we would have troops in the morning coming down the road, coming that way.
Wow.
And to this day, nobody knows what prompted that, why, because they either would, if they would take you the prisoner, if they couldn't hold you, they'd just shoot you, you can imagine they just did not have the means we had to take prisoners.
Even Viet Cong had humanitarian.
Yeah, and these were North Vietnamese regulars. These were hardcore. They were, the Viet Cong would run quick. They'd even throw their weapons down and run, but not the NVA. They were well-trained, hardcore, and to have an NVA take our troops and lay them, and take the time to do it. That's one thing to just leave them.
Yeah.
But they carried them down and put them, and so it always made me wonder, was that a special group of guys that said, we're not going to do this, Was it orders?
Yeah.
Nobody knows.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. Was it orders, or were just some guys that just had had enough and wanted to do something nice for a change?
Well, and it also, and nobody knows either, and I wouldn't say this is what it was, but I would only say we've captured NVA who were Catholic. That was their background. And I've often wondered, I wonder if these guys were just decent guys. I mean, why not?
Yeah.
They're not all mean, horrible. They were ordered to fight just like we were. And nobody knows. It's just it's just an amazing phenomenon.
It is. It's quite an incident.
That to happen.
Wow.
So that was a difficult time, and then of course after I was asked to go identify the bodies, and I've said it's I don't know if it was worse to be on the battlefield and to have seen them, or to go there and have them unzip a bag and see them. Either one. was pretty devastating to me.
How many were you asked to identify?
I identified 14.
14? Oh
Yeah.
my gosh.
And the guys in my squad, and then the ones who were attached to my squad that were what they called headquarters company, but they were the rocket and mortar guys. They were special, but they'd be attached to your squad. And so it was amazing. I signed that, and then lo and behold, I pointed out some personal belongings of a guy that was my best buddy, identified his body, and then now 40 years later, I met his daughter here just 2 years ago.
I read that story. Oh my gosh.
And it was just amazing to me because he died holding her picture, and she was only about 6 months old.
You're talking about Smitty.
Smitty.
Stephen Smith?
Yeah, Michael Stephen Smith.
Okay.
And I found out they called him Stephen.
Okay.
We called him Michael because when you call your name out. I was Ronald L. He was Michael S. Okay. But his family called him Stephen. Okay. And we called him Smitty. Yeah. Everybody's Smith for whatever reason. Got called Smitty. Every generation, evidently.
Or
my
anybody
dad
from
said,
Texas.
Yeah. Everybody from Texas is called Tex, and so I knew her name, Jamie, and then the most amazing story. I got to meet her, and now we meet on a regular basis.
Well, go ahead and tell that part of the story, how you met her.
Well, I had moved to Texas, Arkansas, Texas area, and was in Texas, that area, for 24 years. And my parents became ill, and I decided if we could get a church up here, I'd like to move back to Indiana, even though our kids are all in Texas, because Mom and Dad, we probably need to be close to them. But I told my wife, if we ever move back to Indiana, I'm going to find Smitty's grave, and I'm going to go put flowers on it every year, memorial. I said, I owe him that. So we moved back, and I did. I went to the recruit depot, and I said, where do I start? How do I find where he's buried? So they gave me some good heads up of people in that county to contact, which I did. And how it came about still is a neat thing. A young girl answered the phone, and when I told her what I was doing, she said, sir, that's so long ago. I don't know how long it would ever take me to find that. But I could put it on a search, and we could see if we could come up with it. And so I told her the story. I told her he's my buddy, and about how he died and all that. And she was real quiet. And she said, well, I'll see what I can do. And I'm not exaggerating. Within 2 hours, she called me back.
Wow.
And she said, I found where he's at.
Yeah.
I thought, well, that was neat.
Yeah.
That was really neat because she had to have done really.
She was on a mission.
Yeah, yeah. And so I went, we got flowers, that memorial, and that first year we were back here in Indiana. And I drove down there in Bedford, Indiana, and found it and put flowers on it. When I bought the flowers in Bedford, this young lady made them up for us, and she said, well, don't you want to put something on the tag? And I thought, well, I'm not trying to say anything, because I'm just, it's me doing this. Yeah. I really wasn't expecting that somebody would know I had done it. But I said, oh, I guess so. She said, well, what do you want to put? And I said, oh, put your buddy, Fox23, Ron Whitlock. And she goes, okay. She wrote it on there, put it on there. We go out there, and I spend a little time and took some pictures and put the flowers there. And that night, Sunday night, I'm sitting home here in Anderson, and the phone rings, and this lady says, are you Ron Whitlock? Yes. Served in the Marine Corps? Yes. Vietnam. Did you serve with Michael Stephen Smith? And I said, I did. And she said, well, I'm his sister. And she says, I Googled you. You couldn't have done that 20 years ago.
No.
They would have never found me.
No.
Because I didn't put Anderson, I didn't put Indiana, I could have been passing through.
Yeah.
You know? So 20 years ago, if I'd have done that, they would have never found me. But she said, I Googled you. And so Myra, and she said, talk to me a little bit, and asked me, she said, we want to meet you. So I said, I want to do that. So then I hang the phone up, phone rings again. And this little meek voice is on the phone. She said, is this Ron Whitlock? And I said, yes. And she said, did you serve with Michael Stephen Smith? I said, yes, I did. And she said, I'm going to get emotional now. She said, this is his daughter. And I said, Jamie?
Yeah.
And she said, how did you know my name? I said, are you kidding me? I told her, I said, he got mail every day. As a matter of fact, we got kind of envious. We got kind of, how come you're getting mail every day? His wife wrote him every day and every week sent him a picture of Jamie. I said, don't make me count how many pictures I've seen of you. and the last thing he did, the last time I saw him, I was wounded. I was in the little unit, and he came by, and to see how I was, and he showed me a picture, his picture. He said, I just got this in the mail. He said, here's Jamie. And I was going over how cute she looked, and all that. And then he goes off, and that's the last I saw him, until I identified his body. And that picture he showed me is a picture that they put in his hand, trying to keep him focused. That's what they were trying to do, until they could get him up the hill. And but I met the family. My goodness, a large family, like 10 brothers and sisters. Huh. And the parents had since died, and I didn't get to meet them. But we get together every year. And I go to special things. They send stuff to me like I'm an uncle or something, and to the kids' events and graduations and all of that. And so it's kind of an adopted family. And my kids from Texas just happened to be here when we'd set all this up, and so they were able to go with me, and we met all their family. So it was really, after 40 years, and now all this resurfacing for me, a very wonderful thing to take place, and I got to meet his family.
That's amazing.
So a great story, and he really was a great guy. I could spend more time telling you about him. He wasn't reckless brave. He was a courageous guy. We'd come under fire, and this is things I learned from him. We would come under fire, and the first thing you do is get down. This stuff of where they train you and training to do certain things, that's out the window in the jungle. First thing, you get down and you return fire, but you get cover. But by the time everybody's lifted their head to see what's going on, he was already crawling out to somebody. Huh. He was always the first guy, making sure. And I can remember sometimes I was behind something and a lot of fire was coming our way. Next thing I knew, here he come. He's exposing himself, crawling over to me to make sure I was okay. So, he was that kind of a guy. And so when I became a squad leader, I'm thinking, I got to measure up to a guy like that, and he was just a superb individual. Oh, yeah. Great values.
I wonder if he ever got any kind of medals for
he was. Yeah, he was given, I think he should have gotten a Silver Star.
Yeah, it sounded like Silver Star material.
He was given the Bronze Star. Several of our guys on the ridge got Bronze and Silver Stars, and on that ridge fight, because it was pretty intense. And like I said, I served with some really, I think, courageous guys.
This might be a little difficult, so stop me if it is. But tell me about the 14. Who were they? What did you know about them?
Well, the thing is, them all by name. Yeah. Because at some point or another, you've sat in a foxhole with them.
Yeah.
Or someplace on a watch, and they were varied. I just remember one was a Jewish fellow, and what I remember about a special time was his father homemade wine and cheese and sent it to him. And everybody was his friend all the time.
Oh, I bet. What was his name?
Well,
Do you remember?
his name was Kutri.
Kutri.
And he was a great guy, big guy, is what I remember. And then
You may not be able to remember all the
yeah,
names at this
I
point.
really
but
can, but I can set. It's amazing. I can set and just start in my mind popping their names off.
Yeah.
But then if I'm trying to tell my wife something, all of a sudden that name isn't there. There's a guy named Mueller was the one that was just became a courageous guy. And he testifies that he was a hippie before he was going to get drafted and join the Marine Corps. Had long hair and all that, and he tells a story coming in with all of his hair.
Oh no!
To get it cut off the Marine Corps boot camp, and asking them how short will they cut him. And always, it's not that he was a coward, but if there was guys under fire or something, they said, I need 2 guys to go over there. He'd be the guy that kind of slender down, like see if 2 other guys would head that way, And all of a sudden, that guy just became Audie Murphy or something. Yes, he ran out of ammo, covering these guys that were trapped, and come running back. And because this friend of mine got wounded, he took his rifle, gave him his empty rifle, and went out and ran out of ammo again. Come back and says, anybody got a pistol? And who's got hand grenades?
Wow. And
he's the one that attacked those positions, defending those guys, and then got killed, lost his life doing it. And, guys like that, you think, boy, I sat and talked to those guys. I heard them tell about their family and sisters. One of them was named Baker, was a squad leader. The nicest guy in the world, and got in trouble trying to protect these guys one time. The lieutenant threatened to court-martial him. But what happened was, is we were in a holding position, and the enemy had been right up front throwing grenades and shooting at us every night. And then you get orders, take 4 or 5 men and go out and set up a listening post. And when I was squad leader, I'd do the same thing. And you're going, do what? They're down there shooting at us already. There's no way we can go down there and they're not going to know where we're at.
Yeah.
And there's only 4 or 5 of us. You're sitting down there. So this was pretty intense. And so he took his guys and only went about 20 feet out in front of the line. Well, when you're going out there, you're supposed to radio back at checkpoints. So, he's waiting, like it. And then when you think it's about time to be at that checkpoint, he'd radio. And so, he was, it's what they called sandbagging. My dad says they called it that in World War II also. And so he sandbagged, but the lieutenant found out. And he got in big trouble. But he was one of them that was the most ferocious defender when they were in that assault attack. I think he got a Silver Star, was awarded to him in that action. And matter of fact, my friend Smitty that was killed actually crawled back up the hill. They were out of ammo. And he crawled back up the hill to get ammo. And the only reason I know this story is because the radio man who helped give him the ammo was there and saw this and heard this happen. But the lieutenant was there, and he crawled up the hill and said, we've got to have ammo. And the lieutenant said, Smitty, don't go back down there. There's nobody, there's nobody left. And Smitty's response was, my guys are there.
Yeah.
And so this radio man said, I handed him the ammo. He crawled back down. And of course, he was killed doing it. And though he survived a while, the guys who were left actually had him or were trying to get him back up the hill and keep him focused. But his wounds were just too traumatic. He was very ripped open from shrapnel, and so he died eventually. But you know, it was one guy after another like that.
Yeah.
That the stories, and another guy was named Ponitera, and I'm not even certain I can spell that. Ponti, Ponic,
Yeah.
Terra, something like that. But here's what the tragedy was hit with his. He was the last male in his family. And his mother, there was no men in the family alive.
Wow.
And his mother got some kind of an order from a congressman, their congressman or something, to bring him home. Kind of the Saving Private Ryan type thing.
Yeah, okay.
You know,
Yeah.
you got to get him out of there.
Yeah.
I don't know if our lieutenant, so I'm not saying, I don't know if our lieutenant was aggravated at that or why, but I'm just thinking, if I was the commanding officer, why would you put him where you put him?
Yeah.
But he was supposed to leave the next morning, get out of there. He was the only living male left in the family. And the lieutenant sent him on a listening post that night, which the listening post was the first thing overrun. The listening post is only 2 guys, 3 maybe at best. And all they do is go out and listen. And you know what you are a dead duck. You're only out there for the enemy to run into first before it gets to the company, and that's a warning that they're there. You know, there's nothing you can really do except let them know they're coming, you know. But they put him on the listening post, and he got killed on the listening post. And I thought, now he may not have survived it because he was in my squad.
Right.
Anyways,
Yeah.
But to me that wasn't the point. The point was
Put him in the most dangerous position.
maybe he should have been sent up with the company because you're supposed to get him out of there. But you know, I heard every story. Another guy, and his name slips me right now. He was our what you would call our specialist in rockets. They're the guys that would carry all the little rockets or the tube around with them. They were the rocket specialists. And one of the guys, now he wasn't one of my squad, but he was attached to my squad. And one of the guys told me when there was no one left, so many enemy had overrun them, and they just pocketed together. Our guys did like 2 or 3, trying to figure out how they're going to survive this thing. And apparently they were whispering, and an enemy soldier threw a satchel charge on them. And he said there was a little foxhole, and there was 4 of us, and he said everybody dove for the foxhole. Well, it was only big enough for 2 guys, you know, the way it was dug. So 2 guys are already in it. And he said that guy grabbed me and threw me on top of those guys, and he said, laid his body between me and the satchel, and the satchel blew. And he said, I felt his body go limp, and of course it killed that guy. And see, I told the guy, I said, you need to tell somebody that story. Yeah. I mean, that's almost like jumping on a grenade.
Yeah.
You know,
it's Medal of Honor.
Yeah, and he says he did, but I don't know what the deal is with it. But you know, it was one story after another of those guys. They really were a band of brothers. Not one guy, no matter, and they weren't always the choir boys. You know, they could get mad at each other, and any of us could, you know,
sure.
and things like that, and then we turn right around and do funny things, you know. Yeah. But at the same time, not one guy left another guy, even if it cost him his life. It's amazing, and even though I wasn't there, and that's why I say my dad's words ring true. you ask yourself, could I have done that? Would I have stayed right there? Well, probably, because there's something, not just the training, I think it's the camaraderie.
I think you would have.
That is there. If you didn't know each other so well, it might have been a little different.
Yeah.
But it was, those guys were just great guys. And
But you don't know the name of the guy who blocked the satchel charge?
I have it in here on my list.
Right.
But yes, I do. I have his name in there, and on my list. And he was a funny guy. That's what I remember. And a few of them I didn't know as well. Yeah. And some of them I knew and some of them were just constant jokesters. There were two guys, and I want to tell this story because this is the amazing story with them. One of them's name is, Pagan, and he was Puerto Rican, and his friend was Puerto Rican, and his name will jump out here to me in a minute. But here's the story. Now, Pagan and I often dug holes together, and he was a real quiet guy, just real quiet, but nice, just as nice as could be. And I did not know. I knew they were buddies, and I thought it was because they were both Puerto Rican, spoke Spanish. But I didn't know they joined the Marine Corps together, and they came from New York City. How I found out was I saw a thing on one of the sites I get on. It said, if anybody knows of this guy. And I thought, yeah, that guy was in my... And they wanted to know how he died. They said, we're going to name... this was just a couple of years ago. They said, we're going to name a street after him.
Wow.
And we want to know his story. And I said, I'll tell you a story. And I told he was the point. And I said... and he was in the squad with my friend that was wounded when I was wounded, but he was point, and he didn't know it, but he walked right in to the enemy, and they shot him and killed him. Well, Pagan is in my squad, and he was crying to go get his body, to get him, and they said no, they wouldn't let him go. They said, we're not going to risk you, and at the same time, my friend is caught in this bomb crater, and finally, the squad leader says, okay, we'll cover you. They could see Pagan's boots sticking out from the brush. And he said, I want to get him. And he crawled out to get Pagan, but Pagan crawled out to get him. But as he reached for him, the enemy soldier was right there. He didn't know, we didn't know it, and shot Pagan and killed him. Well, and I told him that story. I told him this way. It didn't matter which one it was. If it was reversed, the other one had done the same thing.
They would have done the same thing, yeah.
Because these two, and they were the ones that told me they grew up together, joined together. Yeah. And I said, oh my goodness.
It's like your situation.
I did not know that. I did not know that about them, and they, they were just good guys. And Pagan's mother became a Christian from missionaries of the church that I pastor in, Church of Nazarene now. We're Nazarene missionaries in Puerto Rico. And so that's how I got when talking to him. I knew some things about him. Wow. But what a story. And so they said, we just may name another street now.
Yeah.
I said, that would be great.
That would be.
Yeah.
That would be. Wow. Any others from that list?
Well, it goes, yes, on and on, and some of it are tragic things, and some of them are hilarious. One is a guy who made it, named Cotton, and he was an African American, great guy. I never saw him once wear his helmet straight. It was always crooked, and maybe it was fitting. And what I've never forgotten, I'd just gotten over there, is we were under a machine gunner was firing at us. And we were outside Way City, and these rounds are kicking up in the sand, and we're sliding down behind the sand dune. And our gunny sergeant, the gunny Ziegler that was killed when I was wounded, comes walking up, and he's yelling at us. And he says, get your heads up over that sand dune. And he said, you can't see the enemy down here. And that African American said, "I'll tell you what I can see, Gunny. I see a long life ahead of me." And that guy, he made it out. He was a great guy.
Are we missing anybody as far as fellows you'd like to recognize?
Oh, boy, the one guy that I mentioned is Joe Quinn, who ended up becoming a police officer that I said was the Sergeant Riker type, you know.
Yeah.
And he was one of those guys that leaves such an impression on everybody that everybody wants to be him when they come along. You know, every guy in his squad, that's all they talked about was Joe Quinn, and was tremendously protective of everyone. But he survived it. And the only way, the reason he did, he was actually my squad leader at the time, is the night before, the commanding officer, the company commander, called him up to his spot and said the company, a sergeant, had to be taken out. And he said, "I need you to come in and fill in his place." So he was with the captain during the time. And that's the reason he survived it. Hmm. But he was the one that did the thing with the food. He did that one other time on security in a big truck. And we went to Khe Sanh, there's mouths of food, and he said, back that truck up there and everybody get out and start throwing rations in the back of the truck. And he got a clipboard like you're holding and a pencil. And as we did it, he just did this. And we just heaped that truck with rations and drove back to our company and gave out.
Yeah, you got a clipboard. You can just do about anything you want.
You know, I learned that lesson from him. That or a badge. You know, you put a badge on and folks will just let you just about do anything, you know. But guys like that, and I think he come out of it with a Bronze Star in the actions. But he, you know, just the memory of those guys, they were great guys. I wish all the family knew some of the things that they did or were, and I'm finding many did not. They didn't know, the ones that died, families did not know what happened.
It's part of the reason we're doing this, because that's the only way they find out a lot of times.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, that's good. This is a great thing.
So you were evacuated to the hospital and then brought back. What was the fighting like during those months? Pretty much the same thing, or
it was not as intense when I went back.
Yeah.
I mean, it's tough to, when you're in one, to say that wasn't intense, but
right.
It was. But it wasn't as frequently intense. Khe Sanh was the same as it was because the siege had been broken. The Tet Offensive was just ferocious for maybe the first 6 months. And then it still was a lot of action going on, but not in that intensity. This Way City and the other cities had been cleared and liberated, and so it wasn't that staccato fighting that took place. And it wasn't nearly as frequent, and that's one of the things I'm thankful for, that as the squad leader I didn't have that frequency of combat as we had in the first 6 months of the year, and so it seemed like we got a lot more security type duties more than point of the spear combat thrust. Maybe the battle on the ridge had a lot to do with that. They may have said that that company's gone through its share, you know, or something. I don't know, but it just wasn't. But there still was quite a bit, and that's why I say when I was squad leader, the the prisoners we took were not over 14 years old. And I knew they were not fielding a good army. They couldn't. And these guys said they might say we were in Laos and this unit came through and just took us all. And most of them said all they were taught is how to clean the weapon and fire it.
Huh.
And so they were not trained. And good American compassion showed through. Because I saw Americans that at one time was trying to kill them. Now, giving them water, coming over with the rations, put a cigarette in their mouth or something like that. And I thought, you know, America's, whatever people say, is still a pretty good place. Because guys they just were compassionate to that, you know. And so it was that was a neat thing to see. And I don't remember any of those guys. I had a squad when I was squad leader for that short time I was there back. I didn't lose anybody killed. Got some wounded guys, and thank goodness.
Yes,
that's all it was. But and I'm thankful for that. But it wasn't because I was that good of a squad leader. It's because we just didn't have that kind of action that took place.
That's good that you had a break, so to speak. It wasn't a break, but it was. Mm-hmm. I don't know how long a fellow can mentally stay with it.
I think there is a point. My dad speaks of it. I forgot how many days. I forgot what he said. 90-some constant days of combat in the Bulge. And you know, I remember him telling things like that. And then I look back now and think of that Tet Offensive going through it, how I felt so numbed.
Yeah.
You know, and you part of it's bodily. You're no sleep. You're groggy. It doesn't take much. It's almost like have never done drugs, but from what I know of folks I've tried to help, the adrenaline fixes. You know, one shot's fired and your eyes are this wide and you're wide awake, you can't sleep, and you've got adrenaline, then you come off that adrenaline high. Another shot's fired and you get another fix, and your body actually wears down during those times.
Sort of like Elvis. I mean, he was using things to keep him awake and then things to put him to sleep, and the drugs just wore his body out. And your adrenaline situation would do the same thing, wouldn't it?
It was, yeah. So you just felt, you know, you got up, you went, you got numb. It was almost like you didn't care from this point to this point until the gunfire started again.
Right.
And then everybody's into it, you know. Yeah. And it was just absolutely amazing. And then those times, like that little boy with the Coca-Cola, were just refreshing breaks. I don't know. I got a haircut one time in a village. We were on patrol and going through a village, and I don't know, you know, it's not that I wanted long hair, but it's hot. It's driving me crazy. And we get to the village, and I saw this guy with these hand clippers. And I was squad leader, so I guess I could do what I wanted. We're supposed to be going on through, and I said, hey, let's take a break. So everybody's taking a break and whatever. Yeah. And I asked the guy how much he would charge to cut hair. And one box of C rations. I had that in my pack. Huh. And so I gave him, and I told the fellas, the squad, we're going to take a long break. And I gave him a box of C rations, and he took about 15 minutes and just whacked my hair off. You know, it just...
That's funny.
So, you know, it just those interesting breaks. But the psychologist told me one time, and it was a young psychologist, I don't think they experienced a lot of life. You know, you got to get so you put the memories of these behind you. And I said, I don't want to put those. Now, you know, I don't want my life to be dysfunctional, but there's no way I'm putting the memories of those guys behind me.
Oh, no.
Because they really were great guys. It makes me wonder what kind of a person they have been, what kind of world would we have had? Would we have had more doctors, policemen, businessmen? I think we would have. College professors. So that propels me to say I want to live the best life I can. You know, I got to do that.
Yeah, these guys who just sit in the bar and try to drink it out of their system, that they're not doing service to the guy who died. That guy
That's right.
died in your place.
Yeah,
So that when you get married, he was there.
that's
When
right.
your child was born,
Yeah.
he was there.
That's right.
And you honor him by living your life rather than retreating from life.
That's right. My friend that here in Indianapolis named his oldest boy after Smitty.
Yeah.
Named him Michael.
Yeah.
And so, you know, that's the memory things that you
Sure.
have that you. And my dad would say that. He said, I am not going to forget what I went through because I'm not going to forget the guys I went through it with. And
There you go.
you know, those kind of memories. So it was a difficult time, and I think it always is. And my heart goes out to the young men and women, you know, in Iraq and Afghanistan, it does resurge some of my memories. Not always to the good, though I'm not dysfunctional over it. But you know, you think of those things. But I feel for them, especially the ones that have gone through some of that tough stuff.
Is there anything more about your Vietnam experience that you'd like to have recorded?
Well, you know what? If I could tell the one emotional thing, and this is maybe for me or for anybody hears my story, it would be this: that when I first was, just before I went to Vietnam, I decided that I wanted to become a genuine believer, Christian believer. And so I wasn't raised in church, even though I had a grandfather who was a minister. Mom and it was a very strict church.
Oh.
And so Mom and Dad got away from that.
Ah.
And they were good moral. They taught me great values
yeah.
and morals. They just didn't go to church, you know. And then they did later. But anyways, so I wasn't raised with a church upbringing, good moral values. But I chose that. And that's, the first thing was, that's how I met my wife eventually, was in the church. And so now I'm in Vietnam. I don't know a lot about Christianity. I've got, you know, the little Gideon's Bible that was given to you. And I'm on top of this hill the night before I'm wounded. And I'm so, you know, you're a teenager, you've seen so much, and you're to the place, when am I gonna get it? Everybody else
Right.
has, so when am I gonna get it? And I remember I kind of got off on my own. I couldn't tell you in a Bible then where Genesis was or Revelation. As a matter of fact, it wasn't in the Gideon Bible. That's just New Testament songs. So if I was looking for Genesis, I'd be in trouble. But anyways, I remember I got alone, and you couldn't get too far in a jungle because your guys are sitting around there, and this is on that ridge now. We had just gotten up on it, and it wasn't dark yet. And we dug some holes, and I got aside by myself, and I remember this is what went through my mind. So this is the way I experienced it. I was talking to God, and I said, if you're there. And I said, I don't know if I'm going to live or die, but I do want to know this. Are you real? I just want to know that. I'm not asking, I'm not making favors. You know, is that kind of a manly thing, I think? You know, no favors here. Are you real? I just want to know. And so I just had a Gideon Bible, and I just opened it. And it had Psalms. So I opened it to Psalm 121. And you know, do I lift up my eyes in the hills? No, my help comes from the Lord. So you've heard that before. And I went through that whole psalm. You know, he neither slumbers nor sleeps, and the moon won't bother you by night, and the sun by day. And it was so hot in the sun. Everything about that said something to me. And I remember thinking, you've got to be real, because I just opened this up and you are saying to me just something I need to hear. Well, it's almost like the Lord said, you ain't seen nothing yet. And a helicopter flew over, and it had a big net on it, and it dropped that net top the hill, which was our supplies.
Yeah.
But there was a mailbag in it. And so one guy in each fire team usually gets to go up and check and see if anybody got mail. I happened to be the one. I went up, and I had one letter, and it was from my Grandma Knight. My grandpa was a minister in Greenwood. Yeah. And it's from Grandma Knight. She was just a saint of the Lord. And I didn't know what a saint was at the time, but she was a saint. And I opened that letter, and it's starting to get a little dark, but I can still, and I'm reading that letter, and she's saying things like, how's things there, things are here, okay, that kind of talk. Then she gets to the end of her letter, and she said, I want you to know I have been praying for you. And she said, God gave me a scripture promise. And if you can get close to a Bible or find one, open it to Psalm 121. And I am not exaggerating to you. Sometimes my kids would say, Dad, that's a preacher story. I am not exaggerating that story. It's as indelible in my mind as it happened yesterday. And I can remember that I stood up and I wanted to scream, he's real. He's real. And he knows where I'm at, And that's what I was screaming in my heart. Yeah. And I couldn't get over that God was real. And so I said to the Lord then, I don't know if I live, I'm going to live for you the rest of my life, and I'm going to serve you. But I still didn't know if I was going to live or die, because I didn't feel like I wasn't bargaining with God. Right. But this let me know that He was real and knew where I was. The next morning, we're heading down that hill when everything happened. And if you've ever seen oh my goodness, what's Tom Hanks movie of the guy that went to Vietnam and he was kind of
4th of July?
No. Forrest Gump.
Forrest Gump, yeah.
If you've ever seen Forrest Gump, where that action starts, where everything just explodes, gunfire, bombs going off, well, that's exactly how firefight starts. Exactly. And that's exactly what happened. And when I was going down that hill, and all of that started. And wasn't that I was cocky or anything, but I really felt, okay, I'm in God's hands. I know where I'm at. So when I got wounded, it didn't shatter my faith, but it didn't make me go, what's going on? Yeah. You showed me this word, and that was too real. That wasn't accidental. But I know what was going on. Now, I'm not saying, I have no reason to say, why did God say this one or not say that one? I never try to explain those things out. The only thing that I'm saying is that if I would have not been injured, I would have been with those guys.
You would have been.
I could still survive, but the chances were I would have been with them, died with them. Yeah. I only know this, that when I read Psalm 121 and then I get a letter, God had to put that on Grandma's heart to write what it take, 4 days, 6 days, or a week to get mailed to you. Yeah.
Just a coincidence.
And to come about the exact same moment that there is no coincidences with God, and I've learned that now well through the years. And so the rest of the story is that God called me into the ministry, and here I am. Well, the other part of that story, I didn't find out till I got back. There's a 12-hour difference between here and there, right? Indianapolis and Asia. And so when it's 7 in the morning there, it's 7 at night here. And so going down the hill that morning was 7 in the morning. 7 at night here, our church was having a prayer meeting. And a lady stood up in that church here. And this is the church I had just started going to, and I become a Christian. And said, I don't know why, but God just told me we need to pray for Ron, pray right now.
Wow.
So they gathered around the front of the church, and prayed, and then went on with the service. Probably not realizing at all, or that any significance of what that moment meant. And there again, who can put a scenario together what God does? All I say is I can tell you the events that happened. And you got to say, there is no coincidences. So that's my story in it that I told my kids. Now they know this story, part of it, of Vietnam. I told them that over and over and over again as they were growing up, because I want them to know there are no coincidences with God. Yeah. God knows where you are and what's going on. And so that was the added story. If anybody ever hears my story,
that's a good one. I'm glad we got that one.
To be told.
Oh boy, wow. As it's winding down to your last days in Vietnam, I mean, they laid you down next to a guy who was killed the day before. Were you kind of getting nervous about it?
Well, I wonder, will this I've saw too many helicopters fall. So, that's on your mind. Yeah. Will this helicopter make it? And there's several, you can, the human body will either panic and scream, yeah. Or it goes into this numb mode almost, almost as a matter of fact, got a face or something like that. I have a tendency more to do that, to talk myself through something and say, got to do this anyways, But all of that's on my mind. When that helicopter was lifting off, is it even going to make it off the top of this hill? And then on top of it is a big old lumbering Chinook, and not a little Huey that could get in there and get out quick, So there, I can remember when it was really lifted in the air, there was almost a jubilation feeling came on me. I'm off that hill.
Yeah.
I'm out of there, and that I actually had made it out. And so going back was mixed feelings, because you get out once, and I've often wondered if the Lord said, "What are you doing? I got you out there.
I got you out there once." It's crazy.
But when they finally got me out, to go back out of combat and said, "You're not supposed to be there." There was a relief there, because there's truth of the matter is I'd proposed to my wife, so now I'd gone back over and I proposed to her. Oddly enough, it's all by letter. But nonetheless, and so now there's a whole different dynamic. It isn't just a single guy, 19 years old, that's back over there. Now it's a guy that's wanting to live to get married, and God's taken me through some other things, and now I've gone back over there. And so it wasn't that I was extra cautious, but there was a different emotional dynamic that was there. I feel for the guys who were married and, or had children, and think, man, Smitty was one, yeah. Here he's over there doing what he did, just relentlessly, courageous, and yet he had a wife and a child. Yeah. So it was amazing. I still say great value system makes a difference. Yeah. Everybody at the Marine Corps is not the most honest people in the world. And so you can say that about any branch, but I can say this truly. Guys who go in and have a strong value, that shows through in how they perform.
Yes, it does.
And what they do.
So you eventually got out of Vietnam, came back home. You said when you got here you didn't have a very happy reception from the American people.
I was spit on And then to top that off, and you're so anxious to get home. It's all I want to do is get home, see my family. And we get to Chicago. Now it's dark, and we get on the plane. We're flying military standby, of course. And when I say we, there's a guy that I traveled with. He was Army Airborne. We just linked up, and we're coming to Indianapolis. So we're both on this plane, sitting in Chicago, and all of a sudden the stewardess comes up to us and says, fellas, you're going to have to get off the plane. And I said, but we're already seated. It used to be, or at least I asked her, I said, in military standby, once you're in the seat, it's yours. And she said, yes, normally, but this one you have to get off. I'm sorry. This guy was mad. He was throwing things and kicking things. And I really was too, but I was containing myself. Yeah. And to come to find out, 2 politicians who were flying to Washington, and the flight would have come to Indianapolis and then to Washington, D.C., needed to get on the plane. And they bumped us off the plane. So my experience was this, but I want to tell you, here's American compassion again. After that happened. We were so angry, and when we got off the plane, he was kicking, throwing chairs in the airport and things like that. And I'm surprised they didn't bring security, but they never did. Huh. Maybe they felt our pain or something. But then they came and said, and it was myself, this guy that was Army, and a Navy guy. And this lady comes to us and she says, we have you a flight. And we said, you do? And she said, yes, we do. And she said, it's out there. And it was an old plane. You'll probably remember when I mentioned a name called Allegheny.
Oh, sure.
Airline. The 2-prop plane, remember? Well, that's what it was, sitting out there on the airline. And they said, they've got that plane to take you to Indianapolis. We said, boy, we didn't think anything about it. We got on that plane. That thing took off, and this is, you know, the wind is blowing, it's howling, it's January, and the plane is doing this, and we're all getting sick in our stomach, but nobody wants to act sick to the other branch, you know, and the stewardess says, does anybody want something to drink? And we went, no. And she goes, oh, thank goodness. She said, I am so sick. She said, this is the first time I've ever flown in my life. And we went, what are you doing on the plane as a stewardess? She says, well, I was in a class, a steward class, and they came in and said, anybody want to fly a plane today? and she said, I do. And so they said, well, we got to take this plane to Indianapolis. And they went to standby pilots and got a pilot who would fly the plane. Huh. And they did that for us. Wow. And flew us to Indianapolis. That was great. I thought that was awesome. Yeah. You know, and so I got to say, when we landed, it felt like the plane landed sideways because the wind was howling so much it was doing this coming in, and the Navy guy, when he got off of it, and that was where they come back in that day. They come out with the stairs, you know, come down the ramp, and he kissed the ground. I wanted to, but I thought I want to be a little more dignified than that, you know. But they put together a special flight. We were the only 3 on it.
Holy smokes!
A stewardess had never flown before, and a standby pilot. You know.
Wow, that sure makes up for it.
Yeah, it really did. I don't know who the politicians were, and I'm glad I don't.
So you mentioned your wife. First of all, to make it official, what is her name?
Her name is Eunice.
Eunice?
E-U-N-I-C-E.
Okay.
And if you read in Timothy, that's how she got her name. Her mother was in delivery or in labor in the hospital reading Timothy, and Timothy's grandmother was Lois and mother Eunice.
Okay.
and she thought that'd be a good name for a girl.
There you go. And maiden name?
Taylor.
Taylor, okay.
Eunice Taylor. Okay. And she's from a large family, 4 sisters and 2 brothers. Okay. And they, you know, just very, very strong church and Christian background. And that's how I actually met her. When I first met her, the only way I could really see her, her parents wouldn't let her date, is to go to church. So I went to church every time the doors were open. That did something to me, and it let me meet her.
We were just talking about that in Sunday school class.
So, so she, you know, she's a great lady, and she was in high school when I joined, and was a senior my last months in Vietnam, or had graduated actually, and I proposed to her.
Sounded like it didn't take you very long to figure it out. This is the one.
No, it's right. It did. I dated her through my senior years when I met her, because I was a teenager when I first went to church, and you know, met her. So when I say date her, wasn't until she was a junior actually in high school. So that's how we met, and we had 3 children. They married, live in Texas, and then there's a girl, young girl, teenager we adopted, and she married my youth minister.
Okay.
And is pastoring in Texas.
Children's names, just get them, make it official.
Laura is our oldest. Ryan, she lives in Fort Worth, married to a teacher and a football coach, and Ryan is married and lives in Houston, and works in a law office. And Tracy is the adopted one, married my youth minister, Dave, and they pastor in Denison, Texas. And then my youngest one is Taylor, and he graduated Ball State recently, and is now taking a job in Dallas.
Okay.
And so now all of them being back in Texas.
So you got out of the Marine Corps and decided to get into the ministry.
That's right. Yeah. And I've enjoyed the years of it. It's been really, I've had some great times. Yeah. And in Texas we had a multicultural, what we call there Anglo, which is English speaking, but I had a Spanish associate, had a Spanish ministry going, a Portuguese ministry, Korean, and African American, all in that same church. And that was really, that's quite an experience. Yeah. And now in Indianapolis, first I'm associate, so that's a different experience after 38 years of being a senior pastor.
Yeah, kind of nice to lay back a little bit, although it's probably pretty busy as an associate.
It's very busy. Yeah. It's very busy, yeah. So it's been quite a life experience.
Yeah. Is there anything you haven't done in life that you'd like to do? Fly to the moon, or
you know, I have that bucket list, and my wife helped me out here a while back. Every time we go on vacation, I'd say I'm going to skydive, and she would always say, "You're not doing it till the last day, so if something happens, you're not ruining our vacation." And so, on my birthday about 5 years ago, she and the kids got together and bought me a skydiving ticket.
Did you really?
And I figured if Bush could do it, 60 years old, I can do it.
Yeah, but look at the shape he's in today.
I know. So I went up skydived, and so you know, my next one now is going to be snorkeling, or no, we snorkeled. It's scuba diving.
Okay.
And so my wife won't go on any of these with me. So, but yeah, they videoed it all, and we're in the plane. No door on that plane when you're up there. And they said, "Is there anything you want to say to your family before you jump out the door?" And I told my wife, I said, "What were you thinking?"
I seem to remember a young man who joined the Marine Corps a while back.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
So
What goes around comes
yeah, that's true. So I have a bucket list, and they do the best they can to help me along that way. There's one that I've always said I'd like to do, and I'm going to get to do it. I never dreamed in my lifetime it would happen, and it was to actually go in and do something church-wise in a communist country.
Mm.
Well, I've never been able to go to Russia. Now it's open.
Yeah.
But I'm going in a couple of months to Cuba. and to set up the Cuban government is allowing us, and our U.S. government gave us the okay, to go in and build a church in Cuba in one of our congregations that need a church.
Wow, that's
and
great.
The Cuban government even gave them the land to do it.
Yeah.
So that was one that I'm thinking, wow. Another one is to go back to Vietnam. I would like to do that in a whole different setting now.
Yeah.
And
you would see things that other people, just regular tourists, wouldn't see.
That's right.
Yeah.
And we do have churches there now.
Yeah.
And so I'd like to go back in some of those areas and visit those.
Well, we always ask our veterans to say a few words for posterity. You got any words of wisdom or personal philosophy you'd like to share with the ages?
Well,
something's kind of carried you through in life.
There are a couple, but there again, they come from my mentors, and it would be, my number one now is to really find out who the Lord is and live for Him. That's my number one. Yeah. The other one is live life to the best that you can and enjoy every bit of it. Yeah. And you don't know, and we know that you don't have to be in combat. You don't know when life can be over. So enjoy your family, enjoy kids, and live it to the fullest.
Pretty good advice. Pretty good advice. Well, Sergeant Whitlock, I want to thank you for this interview, for your service to our country, and for being so nice to those families who weren't able to see what you saw and only saw a name on the list.
I appreciate it. And I want you to know this is really a neat thing. Not because now that I'm part of it and get to do this, but when I first heard about it, I said, you mean there's actually people out there doing this? Yeah. And of course, my friend Ron Harris is the one that put me on to that. I think and contacted you. He's the one that found the story originally, when that happened. And I said, I didn't know anybody out there doing this sort of stuff. And and I think I wish